Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chillin with the Villain, the classic wrestling review podcast where we sit down, chill out, and watch some classic wrestling. Then review it for you, the I used to watch wrestling types. Today's show, we take it all the way back to SummerSlam 91. The match made in heaven as Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth tie the knot, and the match made in hell as the ultimate team of Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior team up to take on the foreign menaces. Mr. Perfect and Bret the Hitman Hart put on a wrestling clinic for the IC Championship, and the Mountie finds himself in a New York Slammer. All this and much more. But before I go any further, allow me to introduce myself. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably know by now, but I am the villain, Marty Skull, pro wrestling veteran, globe trotter, but most importantly, a massive wrestling fan. Joining me today, he used to watch wrestling, but now he's doing it again just for your entertainment. He is the producer of Chillin with the Villain. He is my co-host, Mr. Sir Samuel Scott. Sam, in my little introduction, I suggest that we chill out. Do you think you ever chill out or not?
I used to be very chill. Like
You did
Goofy
used to be
from
chill.
the cartoons. I don't know what happened.
Do you feel as you get older, it's harder to chill and things like your anxieties get greater or not?
No, I actually feel like I'm going back to the Goofy levels. I peaked in my lack of chill about a year ago or 2 years ago. I was awful. This is actually not the worst. I used to not be chill at all. I'm finding it easier actually as I get older. I think that's the only thing I have going for me in the chill department is lack of energy every day.
You're rolling your shoulders right now for people that can't see. Is that helping you chill out at all?
No, I think it's getting me more pumped.
Okay, maybe we should call
it. Then you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, pumped with the villain, chilling with the villain just works. So we're gonna have to pretend to chill out.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to chill out just so we're not doing false advertising. But yes, how are you anyway, Sam?
I'm super good, mate. How are you?
I'm good. I've been busy wrestling in why is my head gone blank? Puerto Rico and Atlanta. So that was a lot of fun. And now just have a big tour of Canada coming up. So very busy. And obviously amongst all this wrestling all over the place, I'm having to find time to watch wrestling and obviously review it for everyone. So my life is pretty much 24/7 wrestling right now.
Yeah. Atlanta, super good listener base for us. Canada, amazing. Puerto Rico, not so much. Did you happen to do a bit of a drive while you're down there? Listen to our podcast, guys.
Well, people in Puerto Rico, I guess a lot of people speak English, but not everyone. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's why.
Maybe, but Italy isn't doing too badly. Japan is big. You know, they're a wrestling nation, right? Japan and Mexico are trumping Puerto Rico. Yeah, it's kind of. I was just shocked at that.
Maybe I have
no
love in Puerto Rico.
Maybe not.
Well, if you're listening,
did they enjoy your match?
Right, I don't know. Maybe not. If you're listening in Puerto Rico, let us know. We want to know who you are. The few people in Puerto Rico that are listening, we want to know who you are. But no, I had a great time, and yeah. But of course, I was super excited for today because we're going into SummerSlam 91. This will be the earliest show that we've done so far. So far, I think we've hit 98. 97
last week,
2000, 2002. So we're bringing it back, and this is a classic wrestling review. So we obviously want to go back to early 90s. Love to go to the 80s, but again, I'd like to hear from you, the listener, the listeners, the chillers. What sort of eras would you like us to cover, or is it more of a case of you want us to keep going kind of back and forth from different eras? Me personally, I enjoy all wrestling, so as long as it's past 20 years ago. Actually, that makes me sound very bitter. I like all wrestling from any era, but for the sake of this show, I think anything sort of 20 years and below is good. And talking about my favorite eras, I mentioned the other week how 1997 was one of my favorite years of wrestling, but I love the late 80s or mid 80s. I love the late 80s. I love the early 90s. And I love the mid 90s, even though the mid 90s was kind of down and people kind of crapping it. I love that as well. So I guess I don't even have a favorite. So I don't know what the point is that I'm making, but I want to know what you guys want us to cover.
This is the earliest pay-per-view. Sorry, not the earliest pay-per-view, the earliest SummerSlam that I've actually seen now. I think before I've seen SummerSlam 1994, is it? With Brett and Owen in the cage?
Yes, and the fake Undertaker match, yeah.
Yes. So that was my previous earliest SummerSlam. So now we've gone way back 3 more years.
This sort of era of wrestling, 1991 WWF, did you watch? Because you didn't get into wrestling till when?
I didn't get into wrestling until the Attitude Era, with the exception of we always grew up playing the games on the Mega Drive. I actually played those before I watched it, though. Yeah. I went back in around. Do you know? I'm gonna say, and this probably makes sense as to why I am I am. I think I tuned out of contemporary wrestling around, like we said in the SummerSlam, in the Survivor Series episode, around 2002, 2003. And that's when I went back into the old Silver Vision vault. Was it called Silver Vision, the DVDs?
Yeah, Silver Vision,
yeah. And discovered the more classic late 80s, early 90s. Yeah, so I actually went back, but I really went back too far. I was more 93, 94.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is fun. I have seen the first WrestleMania and some other older pay-per-views, but for SummerSlam, this is definitely the earliest I've actually seen. So it's really interesting.
All of Hogan's run on top then, you kind of missed a lot of that, or haven't seen a lot of that?
I haven't seen a lot of it. I've seen kind of chapters, like hallmark chapters, but I haven't really seen the progression or when he was like truly on top. Yeah.
I always find it funny, when you ask someone, for example, like, oh, have you seen, Breaking Bad, or have you seen Star Wars, or whatever it might be, or have you seen Scarface? And they say no. And then you're like, oh, like, you've got so much to see, and like how, it'd be amazing again to have not seen it and then go watch it again and be surprised and everything else once again. So now I kind of feel like that, but for you with the wrestling.
With the classic wrestling, yeah. Well, with actually, with most of it, yeah, if you think about it. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. Do you think that when would you recommend someone who hasn't really delved into classic WWF to go from and until? Like, what's that sweet run, would you say, sweet spot, would you recommend?
Oh, that's hard to say. That's a really hard. I mean, I think you could bring it back to WrestleMania 1, obviously, but that's very early. What was that, 84? And I feel like if you're a fan of like modern wrestling, I feel like 84, WrestleMania 1, that sort of time period might be a bit kind of too kind of classic for you. So I'd say like late 80s or early 90s. I'd say just go on, whatever, YouTube or Peacock, and just kind of watch a compilation of the big matches or whatever, or Hogan's big matches and everything else. I think if you're watching the kind of best of the best, you're going to really enjoy it. I think if you sit through like a whole card of stuff, you might not find it as entertaining. So, but yeah, I couldn't really pick. If you're asking me like what's the best year, I could give you an answer for that, but I don't. In terms of just gaining like a greater understanding of sort of wrestling history, I always suggest that to people. Just go watch like the best ofs. I actually was talking to someone that trains at NXT the other day, and they asked me what t-shirt I was wearing, and it was Sergeant Slaughter, and they didn't have any idea who Sergeant Slaughter was, because they were like an athlete that WWE had hired, to train as a wrestler, but they just didn't know anything about wrestling. And I sort of said, oh, you need to go back and watch that. And they're like, oh, that, some of these shows are so long, and that was years ago, and everything else. It's like, I don't know where to start. I don't know where to start. So I guess it is kind of hard, I to give them a specific thing to watch. But I said the same thing to them. I said, well, just go back and watch like a best of DVD, or well, it's not DVDs anymore, that already is classic, but along those sort of lines. So I mean, with YouTube and everything else now, there's you go down a rabbit hole. To do. Yeah. It is. But yeah, everything's been good, so I guess we should probably get into it, huh?
Yeah, well, I am curious, like, you said, oh, if you ask me for the best year, I can easily give you that. we get to
Well,
hear
I said
it.
easily, but now I'm like, I'm
Oh,
not
actually,
sure. Maybe 88, maybe around that time, or yeah, maybe 88.
Okay.
But we'll get it. We'll get into it.
Why are we covering SummerSlam this week?
Oh, good point. So we're doing SummerSlam today because SummerSlam 2023, that's the year, right, Sam? Was just a few days ago.
Mhm.
Sam, what did you think of SummerSlam 2023?
I haven't watched it yet. What did you think of SummerSlam 2023?
You just said you haven't watched it yet. That means you're going to watch it
I might do. I might
in
do.
20 years' time when we're still doing this podcast.
Yeah.
I have not watched it yet, but I will get around to watching it for sure. I really enjoy, for the last year or so, I've really enjoyed WWE's pay-per-views. I feel like the TV show I don't have as much patience for because it's so many commercial breaks. I'm just like, this is brutal, just constant commercial break. But the pay-per-views I find really entertaining. I think WWE does a great job with the pay-per-views. So I'll be excited to watch SummerSlam.
Yeah, I mean, contrary to what you may think about me with my unchilling demeanor, but I actually still do dip into contemporary WWE pay-per-views from time to time. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
they
big
do a
ones,
great
but yeah,
job.
so
They
do. They really do an amazing presentation.
They do. I think that WWE pay-per-views now, it's like, I feel like if you're not a hardcore wrestling fan, I feel like they're still super easy to get into. Do you know what I mean? So I think
Very easy watch, yeah.
Right. I feel like a casual fan probably enjoys them more than a hardcore fan, you know?
I'd probably say so, yeah.
The hardcore fans trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? They're analyzing every single little thing, or like if their favorite doesn't go over, they're not happy. Whereas I think a casual fan's just watching it.
They could just sit back and enjoy the ride. Yeah.
Right. Just like I'm not a Rihanna fan, for example, but I could probably go to one of her concerts and enjoy myself, you know?
Yeah. Or you turn it up when she's on the radio. Yeah.
Right.
Who actually listens to radios nowadays, but you get my point.
So here it is, SummerSlam 1991. The match made in heaven and the match made in hell. We're going back to Madison Square Garden, which we just spoke about a few episodes back with Survivor Series 2002. The date is August 26, 1991. And yeah, we're in New York City, MSG, with the attendance. The only attendance I could find was 20,000. So sounds like a sellout. That seems to make sense. The buys for this pay-per-view, Sam, you want to guess the buy rate for this pay-per-view? How many people paid for this pay-per-view and watched it?
So, and you said SummerSlam is one of the big, like, tentpole.
So they call it the big, they've kind of dubbed it the Big Four: SummerSlam, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania. But they kind of tried to make out that SummerSlam is like the number 2 show, WrestleMania being number 1, then SummerSlam the second biggest show of the year. So it's one of their big ones, yeah.
I would say around 400,000.
That's your answer, 400,000? Pretty spot on, 405,000 buys.
Oh, can I have a 5,000 margin of error, please, on that one? That wasn't bad.
No, that was good.
Thanks.
That was good.
Nice.
Well, the year previous, SummerSlam 90 did 507,000 buys. So we are down 102,000 buys. So business is slightly sloping, which makes sense with everything that's going to happen. But we see the start of the show. We see a video package with Vince McMahon doing a really angry voiceover. The match made in heaven and the match made in hell. And we see the different wrestlers, whether it's Sergeant Slaughter or the Ultimate Warrior or Hulk Hogan, on a really bad green screen. And the backdrop is just the cheapest, like a flames going off or whatever. It really looked pretty poor. We've constantly put over WWE's production values on this show, but here not so much. But maybe it was just a sign of the time.
For the time, yeah. It was so bad that I thought I was still watching Survivor Series 2002.
Right.
Do you remember that inexplicably bad Brock Lesnar one with the same like flames? It looked like the same flame package that they used in SummerSlam 91.
Maybe they kept it the whole time. But I will say this, Vince McMahon screaming and everything else, it kind of got me fired up. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I love it when he does that.
It's funny, right, how he's the the owner of the company, but he's like, I'll do the voiceover.
I'll do the voiceover. Yeah, I always
You could
think
hire
that,
anyone, but he's like, no, I want this done my way, so I'm just going to do it myself.
That's admirable, in my opinion.
It is. It is. So yeah, it says it's time for red hot action. It's time for SummerSlam. We then see our commentary team for tonight's pay-per-view. It's a three-man team for once. We have Bobby the Brain Heenan, Gorilla Monsoon, and Roddy Piper is at commentary. So the famous duo, probably my favorite duo of commentators. I say the majority of people is Bobby the Brain Heenan with Gorilla Monsoon, but we've added Roddy Piper to the mix. I'm a massive Roddy Piper fan, and I always remember thinking that Roddy Piper wasn't that great a commentator, but I actually pretty much enjoyed him throughout the show.
I thought he did a very good job of keeping the energy up. I did notice, though, a slight... I can't really explain it, but I feel like the dynamic was thrown off with him there, despite the fact that he was, in my opinion, like making it very energetic and very interesting. I'm glad he's there. But I feel like, for example, some of his setups, like, for example, Bobby Heenan didn't pick up on, and there was just like a slight dynamic shift there, which didn't really work. But given everything that was going on, it was noticeable for me, but I really enjoyed Roddy Piper on the commentary, and I was actually going to ask you, do you know if he's done any more? This was news to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of the top of my head. He definitely commentated on a handful of shows, but obviously it wasn't his. I don't think it lasted for long. Like I said, the normal duo is Bobby the Brain and Gorilla Monsoon.
Yeah.
I thought the dynamic... So I think the dynamic with Bobby the Brain and Gorilla Monsoon worked so well because obviously Bobby the Brain was the heel and Monsoon could kind of, will you stop or whatever it would be, kind of tell him off, but kind of playfully. But there gets to points in this show where, because obviously Piper's a wrestler and he's a tough guy. And he gets to points in this show where Piper's like threatening to beat up Bobby the Brain Heenan. And I kind of feel like that hurt the dynamic a little bit where Gorilla Monsoon can tell Bobby the Brain to stop it, but it ends at
You can't necessarily tell. Yeah.
He's not going to do anything.
Can't necessarily do the same to Piper,
right?
And
but then Piper's like threatening Bobby the Brain, so I thought that was a little odd because it's kind of like, yes, you want a commentator to one to kind of side with the heels and one to side with the baby faces, but then you also don't want like, we don't want like an angle going on between the commentators. They should still work together to do the commentary, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it does make sense.
I don't think this lasted for long with Piper as a commentator, to be fair.
I feel like he did a good job.
Definitely had energy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So we'll get
he's
into
a funny
the first...
guy, and he's an actor, right? So it kind of makes sense that he's able to just kind of do this off the cuff stuff with the charisma involved. I thought he did a good job. There's
been plenty of guys that have had loads of charisma and been great talkers or great promos that don't translate into good commentators. So,
oh yeah,
Macho Man wasn't the best
commentator.
No. Dusty Rhodes, I don't think a lot of people enjoyed his commentary. So they're two of the greatest, most charismatic wrestlers of all time. So it doesn't necessarily translate.
Always translate. Fair.
So should we get into the show?
Let's crack on.
So the opening match, 6-man tag team action. The British Bulldog, the Dragon, and the Texas Tornado defeated Power and Glory and the Warlord with Slick in a 6-man tag team match. I just said that in 10 minutes and 43 seconds. So just for any of you guys wondering, the Dragon, that's what they refer him to, is obviously Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. But here, for whatever reason, they just refer to him as the Dragon.
What do you think is what I'm going to say about this match? What stuck out and what am I going to complain about straight off the bat?
I'm not sure what you're going to complain about, but I think when you have a 6-man tag team match and it's an opener and the smallest guy in the ring is Ricky Steamboat, who is jacked and a big guy, I'm just like, whoa, I think this was a year before, or maybe same year, like the steroid trials came around. And you can kind of tell watching this match. British Bulldog just looks insanely massive here.
Yeah.
Kerry Von Erich, Texas Tornado. He's coming to the WWF maybe a year before this. He looks absolutely insane.
He's super cut as well.
He's like ripped as hell. He's ripped as hell. Paul Roma, or I guess he's Glory in Power and Glory. He looks absolutely insane. Hercules, he's seen better days, but he's still massive. And then the
Yeah.
Warlord, just ginormous. There is a lot of big boys in this match.
Yeah, absolutely huge. Who's what were they called? Power and Glory? I've never seen before. But yeah, one of those guys was absolutely ripped. It was ridiculous.
Power and Glory was Hercules and Paul Roma. Hercules had been in the WWF for years before this point, like a long time. He did like he had the chains around his neck, the Hercules gimmick. And then Paul Roma, he'd been wrestling all over the place. I'm pretty positive this was one of his last appearances for the WWF. Not long after this, he would leave and go to WCW and actually become one of the Four Horsemen for a little while. Which is interesting because Ricky Steamboat, I'm pretty sure this was like one of his last appearances for the WWF. Not long after this, he would pack his bags and go back to WCW. I think he realized, so in WCW, he was world champ and he was fighting Ric Flair for the World Heavyweight Championship, came to the WWF and they kind of had him in the mid card. And I think the story is they wanted him to put over The Undertaker in a really sort of convincing way, or like almost like a squash match. And he was like, you know what, I'm going to be a mid-carder here. I'm going back to WCW where I know I'll be a main eventer. So yeah, kind of interesting. But it's also interesting. So obviously WWF, they get a lot of these wrestlers and they'll try and turn them more into, I'm going to say cartoon characters. When I say cartoon characters, it kind of sounds like being negative about it, but they want to give them larger than life personas and give them gimmicks, you know? So, because Kerry Von Erich, he was in the Texas territory and world class, he was Kerry Von Erich for years, and then bring him to the WWF and it's the Texas Tornado.
Yeah.
And here, the Ricky Steamboat, I'm not sure if he'd ever been called the Dragon at all before, but here in this particular match, they just called him the Dragon. And I know after this, they would call him Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. It's just the Dragon, and he's got the wings. He's got the cool entrance. He's breathing fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, they paid for him to have all these like fire breathing lessons and stuff to like really do this gimmick. So he did all that work and then didn't stick at it for too long. But what was your gripe with this match?
Well, before I get to the gripe, I just want to say Kerry Von Erich, super cut. Did you know they're making a Von Erich Brothers movie with your boyfriend Zac Efron in it? So you must be really excited.
I was, but Zac Efron's looking kind of strange these days, huh?
He is looking very strange.
He was like the most handsome guy ever, and then he's done all this work to his face. He looks like a completely different guy. I don't understand.
So he made the claim that he ran and fell and smashed his face open and had to have plastic surgery. It says no, he did. Yeah, well, allegedly, sure, Zach, sure. Yeah, he's not looking like the same guy that you fell in love with.
You know what? I think he's just trying to get it. He's trying to get away from being typecast as like, what was the film he was in, High School Musical or whatever?
Yeah.
So he's like a teen idol or whatever. I think he's trying to move away from that, like trying to look more like an adult.
Maybe, but not High School Musical or whatever. You know what it's called. They're always on repeat. When I come around your house, they're always on.
I'm going to let you into something. I don't think I've ever seen High School Musical.
Oh, really? Yeah, no.
I don't think I have. I know some of the songs, but did they do like a Journey cover or something?
I don't know.
Yeah.
All I know is that he's in Baywatch. I've seen him in Baywatch.
I saw Baywatch.
And I think that's it. Yeah.
I saw Baywatch, which was terrible.
Yeah, it wasn't great, was it? It wasn't great at all.
No. But I do like Zac Efron, but yeah, he's changed his whole face. But do you know which Von Erich he's playing? Is he playing Kerry or is he Kevin?
No, he's Kevin.
Okay. Well, he's also found out what Billy Kidman must have had a few weeks ago, because he's packed on the pounds and dare I say got a bit of the turtle belly going on. So but I'm really excited to see that. It doesn't come out till December.
You are going to watch it, are you?
Okay. Oh, 100%. I'm going to go to the theatre and everything.
Is it a theatre movie or is it like a straight to Netflix movie?
No, it's going to be in the theatres. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We'll
I think I heard MJF has a part in it as well.
Oh, does he? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So kind of interesting.
We'll see.
But this match I personally love this match. Like, I just remember this match. Just the crowd is super duper hot, and I just watched this, and it's like You got all these guys that just look like wrestlers. They all look ginormous, and they've
They-
all got
yeah.
distinguished gimmicks. You know, you've got the British Bulldog, the Proud British Man, you got the Dragon, you got the
Yeah.
Texas Tornado, then you got Power and Glory, then the Warlord, this big monster. Like, it's, to me, I just loved how different each gimmick was. And you know, my whole thing is I
Mhm.
like everyone to be different and offer something different. I think this match very much, you know, showed that. Some of these shows we've been watching were like, oh, the guys are just wearing black trunks and that's it. Like, these guys, they all have distinguishable
Something going
gimmicks.
on. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
That was
And
really
the
cool.
crowd,
And they all looked massive. The crowd loved it. It was just like a very happy atmosphere
I thought it was a great opener, personally.
until
Go on.
Ricky Steamboat, blatantly not the legal man, gets the cover. He wasn't the legal man.
He was the legal man. Bulldog hit the power slam, covered, kicked out. He tagged in Ricky Steamboat. Ricky Steamboat
Didn't tag him in.
crossbody. He
Didn't
did.
tag him in. Let's watch it back. We're going to have to watch this back.
Really? I'm pretty positive he did.
I
think he
hope
was.
I'm wrong.
I think you're
I
wrong.
hope I'm wrong.
I
I'm
watched
pretty
it a couple
sure.
of times. I didn't notice.
Hmm.
A masterful ring
Hmm.
psychologist like Ricky Steamboat's not gonna forget something like that. I don't think. But I mean, if you do go into the match, the majority of the match was Steamboat getting his butt kicked until he made the hot tag later. Steamboat, so good at selling, just a tremendous seller, so good at taking these bumps.
Yeah.
Lots of arm drags in this match, lots of drop kicks, just a really good basic 6-man tag, and the crowd's on fire. So
The crowd loved it. I love the energy, and I like the match until that. So
Which
I
might not have
hope I'm
happened.
wrong.
if I have a man crush on Zac Efron, can I also say I think I have a man crush on Paul Roma? I would like to have his physique. It's a shame he never became a bigger star in wrestling because he certainly had all the tools. Maybe he couldn't cut an amazing promo, is what I'm going to guess, or lacked in the charisma side, but he just looks like an absolute superstar.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen him before, but I thought, wow, that guy is ripped.
Absolutely.
He had a great physique.
Moving on, we see a Mr. Perfect promo. It's pretty much just the same as every Mr. Perfect promo, where it's just a perfect pun. I think he says something like, you might be excellent, but you're not perfect. So Mr. Perfect is going to win the IC title match. So next up, Bret the Hitman Hart defeated Mr. Perfect to win the Intercontinental Championship in a whopping 18 minutes and 4 seconds. It should be worth noting here that this is Bret Hart's first singles push. He'd been a tag team with the Anvil for like 6 years, and this was him branching off as a singles competitor. His first singles championship. It's also worth noting here, I don't know if you knew this, but if you thought there was anything off with Mr. Perfect, he'd actually had a really badly injured back. He had some kind of bulging disc or something.
Oh,
He
jeez.
was struggling to walk, but he really wanted to put over Bret, really wanted to have this great match and pass the torch somewhat to Bret. So he agreed to do this match and do the favor for Bret. And after this, he ended up taking months and months off. He had to have back surgery. So just bear that in mind if you're giving the match critique.
I didn't notice that, but if he was trying to give an excellent match, he absolutely succeeded. I really enjoyed this match. I actually think it was my favorite match that we've covered so far on the podcast.
Really? Yeah. Well,
I thought it was excellent. Really good.
This is probably the match that this show is most well known for. I think the things this show's most well known for is this match and then the wedding later on. But this is definitely this match. People still talk about this match today. I thought,
do they?
It's yeah. People
I'm
love
not surprised.
This match.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's two wrestlers that everyone loves as well, Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect. So people still talk about this match all the time, and Bret Hart talks about it in his book and everything else. So yeah, classic match. And
it was so good. Yeah,
just the movements, the selling.
Yep.
Mr. Perfect early on takes that hip toss and he kind of spins. It's kind of
when
like
he spins, like
yeah.
it's like if you have a log of wood and you just throw it and it spins like that way. But he's a human being with apparently a herniated disc or something. You said,
yeah,
that's
it's just
insane. Yeah,
Mr. Perfect. He really was the perfect man to play Mr. Perfect, that character, because he could just do so much perfectly and just flawlessly. I think also when you think of this match, I also think about the spot. I think Mr. Perfect goes to leave. Brett goes to grab him and like rips his
pulls
leotard.
his leotard off. Yeah. And he's just, and then he turns into the type of wrestler that you don't like, where it's just the black trunks and black boots.
Well, no, that's at the end. You're getting ahead of yourselves. I mean, in the match, he rips the leotard.
Yes, he does.
He's pretty much wrestling the whole match with
one,
half his singlet with one strap up and the other's like hanging off him. So
he does.
It's a pretty cool visual. This match, also a big part of this match, Bret Hart kicking out of the perfect plex, which the commentators make a really big deal out of. Like, no one's ever kicked out of the perfect plex, and the crowd do go nuts. I'm pretty sure Ultimate Warrior kicked out of this move like a few months before this, but either way, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story or a good sell on wrestling commentary. So that seemed to work really well. But yeah, just the back and forth of this. There's one point Bret gets pushed off the ring apron. He used to the spot to get pushed off the ring apron and hit the barricade. Here, poor photographer gets in the way.
It's a photographer, man,
And the photographer looks like he doesn't really know what to do at all. But yeah, Mr. Perfect, like one point, Bret gives Mr. Perfect a hair bill, like grabs his hair, throws him over, and Mr. Perfect somehow takes his bump where he takes it, then slides all the way back where he crutches his nuts on the ring post, like just perfect. Or even later when Bret is kicking Mr. Perfect's leg, and Mr. Perfect is doing like a whole backflip from being kicked in the leg or having his leg swept from underneath him. So you forget how just amazing and good Mr. Perfect is, and you wouldn't be able to tell this is the same guy that we saw on our Thunder episode, which would have been 9 years after this in WCW. But here, despite having the bulging disc and the bad back, it's just absolutely on fire. They do this really creative spot where Mr. Perfect drops like a leg drop onto Bret's groin or crutch. I don't know if it's a low blow. Kind of looks like a low blow to me, but he does that and then he goes to do it again, but Bret catches his legs, twists them together and turns it round into a sharpshooter.
Yeah.
Really creative finish. And you can tell Mr. Perfect's back is bad because the referee just calls for the bell
instantly
right away.
Calls. Yeah. I noticed that. I was like, oh, did he actually submit? But then first of all, I remember you told me, I think it was in the first episode, people don't always tap out when they're ready to go. So I let that go. But now with what you've told us now about his bulging disc or something, that would make sense that referee would just call it like ASAP to protect him, because that's gross when you think about it.
Well, Bret sat back on it pretty hard as well. It didn't look comfortable. It did not look comfortable.
Yeah.
I should know, of course, match.
Yeah, because, yes, we found out in episode 3.
Twice in the sharpshooter. But yeah, I think the Dave Meltzer, the Meltzer report, I was just doing a little bit of research on this show, gave it 4 stars. So, but I don't know. For me, I think there's nothing really to flaw this match on. I don't know how you can't give it 5.
Yeah, we don't give individual match stars, do we? But I would say this would be, well, we tend to give the end thing, but if we were to, I want to, by the way.
Okay.
I reckon we should. I would say this is a 5-star match.
It's hard to put flaws in it. Everything made sense. Everything looked good. Everything looked great. It's just, a really great story, a really great match. I'm sure Bret's, I know he's very proud of this match. And yeah, I think this sort of match, so there's this perception that the IC title was the workhorse title, and you always have wrestling fans say that, like, well, the world championship was for like the big draws like Hogan, but the IC title was for the workhorses.
Where it's really at, yeah.
But I kind of feel like that's a misconception. Like, obviously Bret was a workhorse when he had the IC title, and Mr. Perfect was, but there was lots of guys that weren't workhorses that had the IC title, like Warrior and Honky Tonk Man, who I really like Honky Tonk Man, by the way, but like, people have made this kind of perception up over the years. So like, it's the workhorse title. It's kind of like, not really. I don't really agree with that. But I think it's because of matches like
this. Yeah, they get stuck in people's memories, and rightfully so.
It's interesting as well, the contrast between this and then what we're going to see later as the main event, like the difference in wrestling. So maybe this was the show where they're like, maybe we need to make our heavyweight title more like this match and less like the heavyweight matches that we're doing, because this just blew everything else out of the water.
Yeah, it is match-wise, it's downhill from here. It was super good. It was so good. So we see
Bret Hart's parents, they're making a return to the show just 1 week later. We talked about
In the crowd, yeah.
Yes, then we talked about the Hart family last week, of course, on Canadian Stampede. But here,
Mhm.
Stu and Helen Hart are in the crowd, and that's what they announced. But it seems like Bruce is trying to get back in again. They don't mention him, but you see him poking his head in the camera. So they're celebrating in the crowd, and Lord Alfred Hayes tries to get some words with Stu. Stu at the time.
So then,
Go
ahead.
Stu is trying to. He's like hugging Brett. Brett's come out into the crowd. He's like hugging his mum. Stu's there, patting him on the back. And Lord Alfred Ace asks him, like, oh, this is great. Like, what do you think about this, Stu? And at first, Stu doesn't really listen to him. So then Stu turns to him and goes, he says, oh, it's wonderful. And he's about to say, it's wonderful, blah, blah,
and
blah.
Carry on.
And then carry on. And before,
like, okay.
Before Stu can spit it out, Lord Alfred Hayes he goes, it's wonderful. Lord Alfred Hayes just turns around. Oh, I think he's a bit lost for words, or I think he's speechless. Like, back to you. It just completely cuts him off.
It was awkward. It was funny though. It was, so much was going on, so it's understandable. But just the fact that you can see Stu Hart's mouth still moving, but nobody's picked up on the mic, and he's cut back to camera.
Well, Stu continues talking.
Yeah,
he continues talking. Then realizes that he's not, being interviewed anymore, and the microphone is not in front of him, and just kind of like stops and kind of looks like disheartened. I was kind of like, oh, like
it's a little bit sad, but
it was a little bit sad. I don't know what happened with Lord Alfred Hayes, how he managed to, because like it wasn't even like Stu really stopped. He just was. I don't know if they were running out of time or what. But
he didn't stop. He just took a while to start, but then he was giving his opinion, and then it was a little bit awkward.
Lord Alfred Hayes, by the way, I don't know if you noticed this, but
No,
he's British.
Yeah, I didn't. Okay, I noticed that. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But he was a wrestler back in the day, and then he worked for the WWF for years as a announcer and everything else. He's actually one of my favorite. I love Lord Alfred Hayes. So then we go backstage with Mean Gene Oakland with the Bushwhackers and Andre the Giant. We see footage of we'll get there. We see footage of Earthquake taking out Andre's leg with a megaphone. In reality, Andre had to be on crutches because of another back injury. So to kind of justify the crutches, they did this storyline here where they tried to make out his leg had been taken out, obviously with this megaphone. The Bushwhackers, they cut a quick promo. They just say they're going to crush the natural disasters. They give them to Andre, and Andre says that will be his chance to get revenge or to get even, I think he says. Seeing Andre like this, a little bit depressing, huh?
Yeah. He wasn't in WWE for much longer, was he? After this,
I think this was actually, I've got my notes here. This was his last major appearance on WTV, because he died in January 1993 when he was 46 years old. But this was the last pay-per-view appearance. I think the last appearance he did. I think he did some stuff on like a UK tour for the WWE, but it wasn't televised or anything, just house shows. But yeah, this was the last thing on TV.
What a way to go out, the Bushwhackers with this.
And he's managing the Bushwhackers as well.
Oh, that's insulting. God.
The Bushwhackers promo, I mean, of course, the Bushwhackers are just doing the bushwhacking the whole time, which is fairly entertaining. I guess you don't think so.
I can't stand it, but
that's funny. I like the Bushwhackers, but this certainly starts to feed. We see a lot of backstage promos in this show, and this is the era just everyone shouts their promos. Shouty. Every wrestler just, just everyone. No one does that anymore. It's weird. No one in modern day wrestling, people don't do shouty promos. But here,
I hope somebody
every
does.
Single. Maybe I need to start doing it.
Maybe just belt it. And it would just be so jarring.
I just need to do
the norm. Yeah.
Whole bunch of cocaine and then just go nuts on the microphone.
Perfect.
Yeah. So we get to the match. We see the debut, actually, of the natural disasters, Earthquake and Typhoon, with Jimmy Hart. Yes. Well, Typhoon had been in the company as Tugboat, as Hogan's mate Tugboat. And Earthquake had obviously been in the WWE for quite a few years at this point. But this Tugboat turned heel. Tugboat was a babyface. He turned heel and he joined up with Earthquake. They changed his name to Typhoon. So it's Earthquake and Typhoon, the natural disasters. And this was actually their first match. But I didn't realize, I watched this and I didn't realize till afterwards when I was kind of doing my research. I was like, oh, this is actually technically their debut. But they're here and they defeat the Bushwhackers, Butch and Luke, in 6 minutes and 27 seconds. And the Bushwhackers have Andre the Giant at ringside. So it actually made this match even worse, knowing that this is the Natural Disasters debut, because they're two huge guys. And for the first couple of minutes, especially Earthquake, the Bushwhackers just make them look like Wallies, like bumbling idiots. They're bumping all over the place for the Bushwhackers. These monster heels just getting their ass kicked by the Bushwhackers doing battering rams and stuff. It's
the battering ram. Is that the headlock where he gets him in the headlock and does the?
And they're like,
whoa,
whoa,
whoa! You know how you said around this when you talk about the first match, it was around this time they were turning everyone into cartoon characters, but you said, but not in a bad way.
Yeah,
Bushwhackers, cartoon characters in a bad way.
I feel like when I was a kid, I enjoyed the Bushwhackers though. So I'm thinking about them. So they definitely got turned into cartoon characters, because before this, the Bushwhackers back in the old territory days, they were known as the sheep herders, and they weren't like this at all. They were like hardcore wrestlers, like bled and like hard, tough, like big villain heels. Yeah. And did like a lot of like, not death matchy, but like they were really the sort of blood and guts, and they were really like feared and everything else, like all the sheep herders. And then they got into WWF and they just turned completely into kid-friendly cartoon characters, just a complete 180 from what they had been previously. But yeah, this match is it's pretty much what you'd expect. Only thing I've got a note here: Earthquake does the Vader bicep pose. The bicep poses, but just has a big kind of fat arm, no actual muscle. Which I found kind of funny. And then Earthquake wins with his Earthquake splash, when he kind of jumps up and down on the spot and then runs and hits the ropes a couple of times, and then just jumps and boom, there's like a whoopee cushion on the guy.
Yeah,
sits on
just
their
sits
chest.
on them and very clearly like pulls it. Yeah.
How would you feel being sat on by Earthquake's sweaty bottom and gooch?
I would love it, Marty.
He looks like he smells, huh? He looks like he smells. Of course
he
right?
does. Yeah, he does. He looks like he stinks.
The funniest thing here is that Earthquake, I'm pretty sure how old do you think he looks in this?
It's just going to be one of these things where you're going to say, oh, he's 27, because he looks old.
He looks old
Earthquake,
as hell, right?
Yeah, Earthquake.
Yes.
Yeah. So he looks 40 something. Tell me how old he was.
Well, he was born in June 22nd, 1963. So he's like 28.
Yeah.
28. 27, actually. 27.
Oh my God.
This is after June. He's 27 years old here.
So when I said, "Oh, you're gonna turn around and say something like 27," just to exaggerate, it's like, no, actually, yes.
Yeah, he was 27.
Oh man.
And how would you have like such a receding hairline, like where you're bald when you're 27?
Well, I mean, mine started around that time.
I mean,
wow,
you still don't look as bad as Earthquake. Yeah, he looks. Yeah.
Oh, there's something I can wake up every morning. At least I have that going for me.
Put that on your Tinder profile.
Yeah, there we go. They banned me.
Oh dear. Well, let's save that. After the match, Legion of Doom come down and they scare off the Natural Disasters.
Mm-hmm.
As the Natural Disasters leave, Andre is sort of whacking them with his crutches, kind of like an old woman with a handbag.
Trying to get them off of her yard. Yeah,
right. It was that
was funny.
So I guess this is here. Legion of Doom run out. I guess they're setting up Legion of Doom taking on the Natural Disasters. But after watching this match, the Natural Disasters taking on the Bushwhackers, I'm not really too keen to see them take on Legion of Doom, because this was not very impressive, this match. And obviously it's not supposed to be impressive, but again, I like I said, I'm a fan of the Bushwhackers. I'm a fan of Natural Disasters to a degree, but I feel like they didn't really know at this point. Well, I wasn't going to say. It seems like they don't know how to work big man style, because they're just getting bumped all over the place. And this is their debut. Like, they should have gobbled up someone. If they were on against the Bushwhackers, they should have just gobbled them up.
Shoot them up and spat them out, yeah.
Like Hogan had been Earthquake had been beating up Hogan and stuff like a few years before this. And now he's here like slipping on a banana peel to the Bushwhackers. So
Yeah.
Any last
was
thoughts on this
something, wasn't
match?
it? This was the match where Bobby Heenan gets up and walks out to start a ruckus in the locker room, right? I think it was this match where he just leaves the commentary post to walk out to
Yes.
challenge Hulk. Okay, you're a big fan of referees, and I suppose as well the commentators kind of complimenting what's going on and not being the. Well, what I'm asking is, did you find that way too distracting to just see a
The fact that
commentator
Bobby the
walk?
Brain Heenan. No, I was like thankful.
Oh, you
that
wanted
was
something. Thank God, there's
something
something
else
for me to
going
look
on.
at. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
So,
Yeah.
so getting to that, we do see Bobby the Brain Heenan shown backstage. He walks up. Sorry, he's got the NWA/WCW World Title in his hands,
Yeah.
and he knocks on Hulk Hogan's locker room door, which apparently is a door, but just had like a paper printout
Piece of
with
paper.
the word piece of paper
Hulk
just
Hogan
stuck
yeah.
on with sellotape that just says Hulk on it. He knocks on the door opens, but we don't see who's there. And Heenan says, on behalf of the Real World's champion, Ric Flair, he wants to challenge Hogan to a match at any time, any place, whatever. And Hogan, we presume it's Hogan, slams the door in his face.
Yeah.
Heenan then tells the cameraman to turn the camera off, and he's all embarrassed. I did wonder, I was like, oh, the sign looks so bad, it almost looks like that he didn't set it up himself, like he just stuck a piece of paper on a door, be like to look like he's talking to Hogan, which wasn't the case. It's just a really bad sign. But so I'm assuming you don't know the background here with this with Bobby the Brain Heenan. So Ric Flair had been in WCW, and he was the world champion, and a guy called Jim Herd had became basically the new president of WCW, and he had no wrestling background, and he's pretty much infamous in wrestling for being a complete idiot. He came up with the ding dongs and famous ideas like to have like hunchback wrestlers that could never be pinned, and just really
That's
crazy.
kind of funny though.
Right. It's just a whole bunch of garbage. Jim Herd wasn't a fan of Ric Flair. He actually wanted, like, this is like 1990 or late 80s, 1990. He wanted to come into WCW and change Ric Flair's gimmick. He wanted Ric Flair to cut his hair and change his name to Spartacus and do a Spartacus gimmick. Like Ric Flair, the Ric Flair that had been Ric Flair for on top for years and years. Anyway, it ends up leading to Ric Flair leaving the company. But he was the NWA/WCW World Champion. And back then, when you won the championship belt, you had to pay a $25,000 retainer. So basically, you give the money, and then when you lose the title, you get the money back. And I guess back in the day, it was like during the territory days, it was to stop wrestlers
running away with the belt.
Either running away with the belt or, let's say, not wanting the job. Like you didn't want a wrestler to ever be like, oh, I'm not losing, because $25,000 obviously back then. I mean, I'm not good with the conversion rate, but I assume it's a lot of money now, but that's, what is that, triple now? Or
it would be something like that, like at least 70.
Right. So you give 70 grand or whatever, that's a big chunk of money to give away. You're going to want that back, aren't you? So when they come around to ask you to drop the belt, most likely you're going to do it because you're going to, so it makes sense. But basically, he left and they never sent him the retainer back. So he just kept the world championship. And I guess in one of his conversations with Vince McMahon, he told him, it's like, oh, I still have the belt here, by the way. Like, what should I do with it? And Vince was like, bring it with you. So they did this spot here where Bobby the Brain Heenan kept saying the real world's champion is going to come into the company. And this is actually, this clip, the SummerSlam like one, Flair hadn't actually debuted yet. But Bobby the Brain was talking about him coming. And it all seemed like they were leading to do the big WrestleMania match with Ric Flair and Hogan, which for whatever reason, they never did in the WWF. The WrestleMania ended up changing the matches where Flair worked Macho Man and Hogan worked Sid. We never got that big Hogan and Ric Flair match in WWF, which just seemed obvious. And there's loads of different philosophies why it didn't happen. One being like they tried it on the house shows and it didn't draw well. Another one being maybe Hogan didn't want it, whatever it is. But it should have happened, and it's a shame it never did. It happened in WCW in 1994, so I guess we'll review that one day. But yeah, I always like to see Bobby the Brain Heenan. He's so entertaining. For me, he's one of the best performers of all time, so I enjoyed this.
Doesn't his voice when he's on commentary sound like Trey Parker? Like doing there's a South Park voice that sounds just like Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Maybe.
Do you know the one I mean? Yeah, there is one. It's pretty funny.
I never thought of that before, but I can see that. Yeah. Next up, we see a backstage promo with the $1 Million Man and Sensational Sherry. We see footage of Virgil cleaning fungus from Ted DiBiase's feet and cleaning his boots. Then $1 Million Man cuts a typical $1 Million Man promo on Virgil, just saying everybody's got a price. Obviously, we're building up to the big Virgil and Ted DiBiase match. Virgil had been with Ted DiBiase for years as his, I guess, manservant. And he's finally broke away. He's finally standing up for himself. So it brings us to Virgil defeating Ted DiBiase with Sensational Sherry for the $1 Million Championship in 13 minutes and 11 seconds. So this, I think, was a really, really good piece of storytelling. What say you, Sam?
I agree, Martin. I liked it very much. I don't know too much about much of their history. I'm assuming there was like a bit of a racial element in all of this going on. We might need to.
It seemed. It seemed well. Yeah. It seemed kind of. It did. It seemed in bad taste, and it seemed that I don't think the WWE would do something like this now, having a rich white man and then his
mistreat his servant. Yeah,
right.
His black manservant who's got like dressed in a little bow tie. It was well, what's weird to me is I can't tell if that was intentional or just tone deaf. It's hard to tell, right?
Maybe tone deaf.
That's what I'm leaning towards.
Maybe
people enjoyed. I guess people enjoyed what's to come. You know, they seem to enjoy the match at least. So.
Well, for sure. It's funny because Virgil is kind of his whole career has kind of been like a rib. So they called him Virgil. I don't know if you know this, but Dusty Rhodes' real name is Virgil Runnels. So they called him Virgil after Dusty, it seems. And then years later, Virgil has kind of become a meme on social media and everything else. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but have you ever seen the lonely Virgil meme? It's just a picture and it's like he's at a convention and he's got a massive sign and it says like WWF superstar Virgil, and it's just like no one there. He's just sat there by himself, right? And Virgil's kind of become infamous over the years for like doing these conventions everywhere and basically like forcing people to buy his stuff, like pressuring them into it, like not letting them leave until they give him $10 for a picture. I've also heard about him like, so he does that at conventions or wrestling shows. I've also heard about him like just going to like shopping malls and just setting up like a little stand or something in the shopping mall, and then again anyone that recognizes him like forcing them to give him money for a picture or not. You know, like if you go to Hollywood Boulevard and there's or New York Times Square and the people in the Spider-Man costumes,
street entertainment, yeah,
and they charge you. You take a picture and they're like, "Oh, you owe me $5." He does that, but with wrestling.
It's like a traveling one of those, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I like Virgil.
Here he comes across like a superstar. Like the crowd was awesome for this. I think it just did such a good story. And like Virgil looks jacked here, and like the match is pretty good. You know, I mean, obviously it's Ted DiBiase, hell of a wrestler, but like this match was on fire. And I think this is another match that when people talk about this show, they go back to this because Virgil's on fire. The crowd's really into it. And Roddy Piper is like playing the part of like Virgil's mate. And he's constantly screaming like, "You can do it. You can get him. Oh, get him, Virgil." You know, all this stuff. He's getting so fired up. And this ended up turning out to be like a really good piece of business, huh?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I was actually thinking of this when I was right at the start, when I was trying to think of an example of what Piper added to being on the commentary team. I thought this was an excellent choice. I thought it was really, really good. It's a load of fun. It was kind of odd when you think. I understand why they did it, because if he got disqualified, then Virgil would have no way of getting the belt.
Well, let's just preface this. So during the match, at one point, Sherry hits Virgil with the purse, and
she's caught by the ref.
Virgil had $1 Million Man in the $1 Million Dream. Submission looks
Yeah.
like he's going to win. Sherry jumps in, hits him with the purse. So they call the disqualification. But of course, so Virgil would win by disqualification, but he wouldn't win the championship. So then the referee says that he demands that Sherry return to the dressing room and that the match will continue because the title can't change hands on DQ. So they announce it's going to continue and the crowd goes nuts and everything else. And Bobby the Brain, that's actually great here. He's like, she has a manager's license. Like, I don't think the referee can do that, which I thought was kind of funny. But yeah, they did this moment in the match where you thought it was kind of like, oh, but it was weird because when they announced Virgil as the winner via DQ and the crowd kind of still pops. But I don't know if the crowd had twigged yet that the belt can't change.
That means he can't get the belt.
On disqualification, yeah. So, sorry, what are you going to say about that? I just want the listeners to know what happened before you talk about it.
Yeah, fair. I was just going to say, this is the first time that I can think of where I've seen that, where the referee has said, but we're going to let the match continue. I'm the referee. This is at my discretion. I'm going to say the match continue. I don't think I've ever seen that before in my life. Maybe it's happened before.
It's happened a lot where a heel will win by cheating, for example, or, something along those lines. And then the referee will realize he cheated and then he'll restart the match, for example. That happens a lot.
I haven't seen it though where it's just like, hey, at my discretion, I'm the official, I'm going to allow this match to continue. It didn't really restart. They just got rid of the distraction and let that carry on. So I've never actually seen that before.
It was a different way how they did it. Yeah.
I thought it was kind of unique, but also I just thought it was kind of funny when you think about it, where somebody's broken the rules and their punishment is that opportunity that you have to break the rules, you now lose. So his manager has to leave, where she shouldn't be breaking the rules in the first place. So $1 Million Man's punishment was to just not do that again, which I thought was just pretty funny when you think about it. But that was a nice little part of the story where it was like everyone wants Virgil to win, like even the officials, but in a kind of underhand kind of way. Or it was just good. It was really good storytelling. I enjoyed the whole thing. It's actually the second best match for me.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. Normally in that way it would be like, oh, Virgil wins by disqualification, so they restart the thing or whatever, but then he ends up not winning the title. Would normally be how it'd be. But
okay.
So it kind of made you think like, oh, he's not going to win, but then obviously he sort of triumphed and won the $1 Million Championship. This was probably the peak of Virgil's career. I feel like it was all kind of downhill from here. Years later, he ends up going to WCW and somehow ends up in the NWO as Vincent, which is like another rib, obviously named after Vince McMahon. And the story is that the Godfather was going to go to WCW and be kind of like the enforcer of the NWO. And basically Virgil offered to come in for like a third of the price. So they went for Virgil instead. That's the story I'm pretty sure Godfather tells. So, but he still I saw Virgil at a convention not so long ago. So he's still out there, trying to make money, trying to hustle.
Did you make it home without paying $10?
I avoided him like the plague for sure. I'm pretty positive I was at a convention once, like years ago in the UK when I was much younger. I think I was like wrestling at a convention, and Virgil was there, and he had his stand, and he was selling like, I'm pretty sure he was like selling like this show on VHS, like the VHS of it, and like now VHSs are kind of like retro again, but this is like 2010 or something where like these VHSs are worth absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And he's still trying to sell them at his merch stand, and it's not even like he's on the show, but it's not like a Virgil video. Right. You know what I mean? So, yeah, he's what we call a little carny in the wrestling business.
But he looked great here.
He did.
It was a great match. Had a nice ending. Everybody wanted the ending. Everybody got the ending. I feel like a lot of this pay-per-view was giving the people what they want, but I guess we'll move on to that a little bit later. But it was a really good match. I did enjoy $1 Million Man's classic great heel tactics, like in-ring shenanigans. I think he's great for that. Just everything he does just to try and get the upper hand. It's very good. Sorry,
It's pretty crazy as well because he's awesome here, but this is this is not the peak of his career. This is the dying days of his career. I think only this is 91, so he only wrestled for like another 2 or 3 years after this. Not long after this, he goes into a tag team with your favorite IRS to kind of like offload the work. But he still moves and looks awesome here. I feel he does a great job. He bumps.
I thought he did a very good job, and
Right.
but more specifically, I love his dirty tactics. I think he has a very good template to look to if you want to learn some filthy in-ring shenanigans.
The suit that he comes to the ring in, or the kind of like ring jacket that looks like a suit that he kind of pulls off. I always just think it's like the coolest outfit. Like he's super duper cool. Apparently, like I won't go into it too much, but to do this gimmick, Vince wanted it to be believable and to keep kayfabe. So Million Dollar Man
Had to dress the part.
well, he had to dress the part, but like the WWE would pay for it. It'd always have like first class flights and limousines and
nice
5-star hotels, everything, because he couldn't be traveling in coach and all this other stuff as the Million Dollar Man. So he got all this special treatment. I think he probably had quite a lot of heat with the boys because
probably
all this special treatment, but they had to keep the gimmick alive, and it's remembered as one of the greatest sort of
I was going to say
gimmicks of all time. So yeah.
Sure. Yeah, he's great. He's really good.
Next up, we see footage of the Mountie tasering the Big Boss Man with a cattle rod. Then the Mountie cuts a promo. He stood there with the police and he says that he wants the police to arrest Boss Man after he beats him. Why is he asking this? Because tonight we're going to see a jailhouse match, which I'm not sure if they explain, but basically the rules are that the loser has to go spend a night in jail, which is just from a kayfabe standpoint. I mean, it's a funny idea, but how would the WWF even like get the police to agree to that? Like, we're doing a wrestling match, we're gonna have a fight. The loser, can you arrest and put in jail? Like, that seems a little unrealistic, does it not?
Yeah, isn't that actually? That would be like false imprisonment, right?
Right.
Which is a federal crime. Yeah, it's just the worst thing ever. But yeah, it's a very weird stipulation. It was funny though. Like
it was really
officers
funny.
of the law, men of the law, and the loser has to go to jail. And there's 3 kind of like jurisdictions at play. You've got Boss Man, who's like the county, like corrupt, cop, whatever. You've got the Mountie, who's the Canadian police officer, and then you've got the actual NYPD, and none of them really like each other. They try and suck up to the NYPD when they want to, right? And then when they don't, they don't. It's just a very funny little triangle. It was funny at the start because we'll get onto it, but it started to wear a bit thin towards the end of the night. They try to drag it out a little too long. But at the start, just the concept is bizarre. Yeah,
it's really
odd when you think about it.
It definitely seems, you can tell the WWF is really trying to cater to a younger audience here, or to kids. I'm just gonna come out and say kids, because no grown man would watch this and believe this to be real. Like, oh yeah, he lost that match and they had to put him in jail. Like, whereas a kid, it sounds like an idea a kid would come up with. Like, oh, I think the loser has to go to jail. Like, okay,
it does, yeah.
It's kind of silly, but kind of entertaining at the same time. Mountie, I always found really entertaining. We do see
funny.
He is. We do see before the match, Big Boss Man cuts a promo and he basically just says that the Mountie will be the one spending the night in jail, and that leads us to Big Boss Man defeating the Mountie with Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart's had a busy night in a jailhouse match in 9 minutes and 38 seconds. The match itself, not a whole lot to kind of
great, yeah.
Yeah, Big Boss Man, I always been a big fan of his work. The Mountie, not so much. I think Mountie's an amazing character, and he takes some pretty animated bumps and everything else, but the match was kind of whatever, I thought. Probably one of the weaker matches on the card, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I definitely would agree. And I can't believe how long you said it lasted. What was it again?
9 minutes and 38 seconds.
So it was half the duration of the Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect match, yet it felt twice as long.
Yeah. You know what I did think during this? Like, both guys are wearing the black pants with the yellow stripe, and then Boss Man's wearing the blue, and Mounty's wearing the red.
Red.
So they're
yeah.
kind of like they're kind of like Ryu and Ken to each other, huh? Is that kind of like the idea you feel?
Oh yeah, like the red guy versus the blue guy, like classic. Yeah,
Right. It's like it's like different versions of each other.
two sides of the same coin kind of thing.
Like Sub-Zero and Scorpio.
Yeah. Like, yeah. Do you like the red cop or the blue cop?
Right.
They're both cops. Wrestling is even though spoiler, even though overall I wasn't a huge fan of this pay-per-view, and we'll get to that at the end. The era I love because of this kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. You mean the
red cop versus blue cop? Yeah, it's just the premise. Just and the red cop versus blue cop, and the loser goes to jail.
Who booked this crap? Well, also, Big Boss Man does win with an Alabama Slam, which is that move. How do I put this? There's not many moves that I would just flat out say, no, I'm not taking, but the Alabama Slam, just no thank you. Just a instant whiplash,
onto the back of your head. Yeah.
Like you're just
no thanks.
No thank you. I don't think that move is safe whatsoever. I don't want to take that move. I'd much rather take the Boss Man Slam. But yeah, for some reason, he finishes the match with the Alabama Slam. So he defeats the Mountie. Then straight away, the cops grab Mountie and they take him past the dressing rooms. It's pretty funny. They kind of kept the camera on, so it wasn't pre-taped. They grab the Mountie, they take him down the entranceway, they take him through the curtains, and you see backstage, I guess at MSG, obviously, at one point they walk past Ricky Steamboat, who's kind of stood there watching at the monitors, and they're kind of dragging the Mountie out as he kind of screams and, is objecting, being arrested, protesting, yes. And I guess we'll get into it, but basically this ends up being a theme throughout the night where we keep going back to seeing the Mountie being arrested by actually here we see the van actually take off. They throw him in the van and it takes off into New York City, so they're taking him to the Slammer. So I thought this was definitely the best part of the segment, watching, like, getting to see backstage and watching the Mountie getting arrested and put in the van and taken away. That was more entertaining than the match. The match could have probably been 4 minutes long, to be fair.
Yeah, they kept cutting back to it throughout the night, and I don't feel like you really got much value out of seeing him, even not just being arrested, just being thrown in the van's fine. Okay, we got it. He's going to spend the night in jail, but getting to see him get processed, his fingerprints, just the process,
taken.
Yeah, it just wore thin very quickly. But I feel like it should have ended there, like you said. And going back to episode 1 of our podcast, we do like the other wrestlers who are backstage not really knowing what's going on is a nice little thing that we have running. And we got Ricky Steamboat, or the Dragon. We got the Dragon not knowing what's going on this time. So that was
the Dragon funny. In just like his normal clothes, not being very dragony, watching the
not
show
being
backstage.
Very dragony at all, yeah, which is pretty funny.
When I was watching this, I assumed that you would have absolutely loved all these Mountie cutbacks they kept doing. I thought you were going to love it.
I like the one that you just mentioned. He gets thrown in the van. I was like, that's great. First of all, the match, it did come off of a dud match. So it's like, okay, I sat through that. I get to see this. Okay, there's my payoff. Very cool. But then when they just kept cutting back to it, I don't know if we're going to go to that, but I was just like, the joke wore thin.
Okay.
Like very quickly. Maybe the second one where they open up the white door and they're just dragging down. It's like, okay. And I thought he was already in jail by that.
Right.
And they cut back, he's getting his photo taken. He's still complaining. And like, props to him, just like keeping it going. Just screaming nonstop the entire time. But yeah, then to seeing him, he's protesting about his photo taken. He's protesting about getting his thumbprint. It's like kept cutting back different layer of the process.
I mean, I thought they did it.
Got tiring.
We might as well get into it now. Like they did, he wouldn't allow them to take a picture of him. He's got his head down. Then I think the photographer says, "Oh, I guess you got your ass kicked by Big Boss Man." And he looks up. He's like, "What did you say?" And the flash goes off. They take the picture, and then at one point they want to take his fingerprints, and he won't give it to them. And he's like, "Oh, if you want the finger, I'll give you the finger." And he puts his middle finger up. I think he's
which
in cuffs,
I thought was kind of shocking for back in the.
I thought it was really shocking
back in the day. I thought they'd have to, because they blur that out.
Oh, did they?
On TV.
Okay.
When like DX used to do something like that, they used to blur out the finger sign. So I
was
guess because
shocked
this was pay-per-view, like maybe they can get away with it. But
in
I actually was surprised they
1991.
did
Yeah.
that for this early. Yeah.
We might as well get to it now because the big payoff, they keep going back to the Mountie, screaming and shouting, I'm the Mountie, you can't do this to me. I want my lawyer, I want my phone call. And it's quite entertaining. But I felt like the payoff of this kind of came out a little left field. It was kind of bizarre. They end up putting him in a jail cell and he's in there with two other, what would you call them, jail mates or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the one guy is, I can't even remember what he says, or he's acting weird. But then he says, oh, check out the other guy. And then the other guy stands up and he's got a very camp voice. He's wearing a leather jacket. And he asks the Mountie, what did he ask him? Oh, don't you just love the way that leather feels on your skin? Or something like that. Insinuating, how do I word this? That he's homosexual. And that he's been put in jail with a homosexual. And so, of course, then Mountie like screams and everything else. Again, I don't think WWF would be doing that in this day and age. This doesn't age very well whatsoever.
No, that didn't age very well. And also,
it wasn't funny, really. It's just kind of like it seems like lowest form of humor for like a cheap pop, right?
Yeah, and we're not talking about cheap heat, which is something that I love, but like this kind of cheap gag is not something that I'm mad on.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like a lot of times less is more. So I just think the idea of that first segment where they just cart him off, they slam the van doors and they drive off into then you can just fill in what his night is like.
Yes.
He's a police officer and he's in jail. He's probably not going to have a great time.
Yeah.
But we're good. Having to see, have the joke spelled out in your face, and it was he has to share a cell with, I guess, someone who's supposed to be a bad actor. You know, like I don't know a nice word for me, but that's supposed to be imagine being put in a cell with that guy.
Right.
Like that's it's like, what I had in my head was probably better,
and like they kept going back to it, but none of the after they, like you said, after he got put in the police van, they drove off. None of this other stuff like furthered the storyline or anything.
No, it didn't.
Else.
It was done by that point, which is my main critique. Yeah.
It's like, we got a payoff. Mountie's going to jail. Cool. We don't really need to keep seeing him. So
I think the van leaving, like he's thrown in the van, they slam the door and it just leaves the MSG and into the night. We don't hear from the Mountie ever again would be more powerful.
And then then he comes back on TV, the week later.
The next week and he looks terrible.
Right. That would have been enough.
I think that's better, but yeah.
So then we just see like a whole montage of backstage promos.
Well, yeah.
It's like 12 minutes of it, so I'm not going to get into it. We see promo with $1 Million Man. So I'll just go through these, Sam, and if you have any comments, you can bring them up because it's pretty standard, really quick kind of promos. I don't really know why they did this. I thought at first, maybe they're doing this while they prepare the ring for the wedding, but that wasn't till much later. So
till after, yeah.
That doesn't make sense. So, we see a backstage promo with $1 Million Man. He's saying he got ripped off because obviously he lost earlier. We see Brett, after his big win, he says tonight he proved that there's no such thing as perfect. We see a backstage promo with the natural disasters. And they say they're going to eat up LOD, and I believe them.
Yeah. We see Jimmy Hart's like trying to get litigious on the whole thing, which is kind of funny, but whatever.
Saying he wants his lawyer and all this kind of stuff. We see backstage promo with the Big Boss Man. He does his joke. What do you think of this, Sam? He says, what kind of bird can't fly? A jailbird.
Yeah, it's like, jailbird. There's so many birds that can't fly, but it was a jailbird. Yeah.
Silly. Between these, they're going back to the big, not the Big Boss Man, to Mountie in the jail, kind of what we spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
We see the Nasty Boys. They say they're going to bring Legion of Doom to Nastyville. Again, back to the Mountie. Then we see Legion of Doom. They say, okay, this no DQ matches right down their alley that they're going to have tonight. All these promos, all of them, shouty. Everyone's just shouting their mouths off. We even get backstage. We see Sergeant Slaughter and his crew. They say that Hogan and Warrior are outnumbered tonight. And we see Psycho Sid, but it's actually Sid Justice. He basically says he's going to keep it right down the middle and sort of make sure that justice will be served. This is obviously the era where everyone just did their promos were just puns about their name. So Mr. Perfect, everything's perfect. Sid Justice is going to make sure justice is served. And like the Nasty Boys, we're going to take you to Nastyville. Very much like that. It basically all leads to First of all, do you have any notes on these promos other than the amount of cocaine they were all doing and how they're all screaming at the top of their lungs?
That was lovely. I like that part. I will say, I feel like we missed a part where. So Sid Justice is going to be the special guest referee for this match, which is already a 3-against-2.
Mm-hmm.
We did forget to point out, I believe, that he's saying he's going to call it straight down the middle, fair's fair. And then like Mean Gene said, well, actually, we've got footage of you that may not be the case. And then you get shown this segment where it looks like he's conspiring with Sergeant Slaughter and his team. I just thought we should probably bring that up because it is kind of part of the story for the final match where you don't know where, like, what he's going to do.
Well, I think
that
they show footage of Slaughter and his crew talking to Sid backstage, but I think they made it kind of obvious that Slaughter and his crew were trying to convince Sid to side with them, but Sid was kind of blowing them off. I think they made it kind of clear in the footage, but it was a nice idea. You know, they'll have a special guest referee. And
throw in that, are they going to do it? Yeah.
Yeah, whose side are they on and everything else? Because at this point, this was actually like Sid's debut, and I guess we'll get there with, you know, the wrestling main event at least later. And predominantly in WCW before this, he's kind of been a heel. Here they bring him in as a big baby face, so I guess people didn't really know which sort of side he was going to go on. So yeah, they're trying to put that seed in people's heads, like, oh, he could turn on Hogan and Warrior.
Was he wearing his special guest referee disgusting low cut vest already in that, or was that later?
In this promo, I think he was,
yeah.
Right?
Okay. If you haven't seen it, it looks absolutely ridiculous. It's like a woman's top, but referee colors, and it's the tightest and lowest singlet vest I've ever seen, and it's on Sid Justice, Psycho Sid. It just looks so funny.
I liked it.
I bet you did. Yeah. Are you going to get one?
I might make one.
Get villain ones, yeah, and then see if people will buy them. What's I going to say? Who else? We saw. Did we talk about Macho Man?
Was that here? You can talk about Macho Man. He's on the 900 line, right? So Mean Gene's trying to talk to Macho Man on the for whatever reason, Macho Man's on the 900 line. And Mean Gene tries to get an interview with Macho Man whilst he's on the phone. So.
And then Macho Man turns around and says, "Excuse me, I'm on the phone." And then he cuts back. Then he just turns around and then says to the person on the end of the phone, "There's a little pause," and he goes, "Gene Okerlund," as if the person on the phone went, "Who was that?" Which I just thought was kind of a funny little bit of comedy off the top of Macho Man's head. Real quick, I should have brought this up on the the $1 Million Man match, but the $1 Million belt is a tangible physical item, but is it a championship in itself? Like, what's the status of winning the $1 Million belt?
It wasn't a sanctioned WWF belt. It was something that I think the idea was that $1 Million Man had bought the World Wrestling Federation Championship off Andre, but then the WWF officials like stripped him of it. So then he decided to make his own like $1 Million Championship, but it was just for him for show. But he had it for years, and so it wasn't sanctioned, but I guess it meant a lot to him. So the idea was that Virgil challenged him for his belt, even though it wasn't a sanctioned belt by the WWF. Next up, we see Legion of Doom defeat the Nasty Boys for the WWF Championship, Tag Team Championship, so to say, in a no disqualification match. So, Jimmy Hart, he's back out there. He's having a busy night. Jimmy Hart. What do you think of Jimmy Hart first?
I think he's absolutely excellent. Are you going to break my heart and say, "There's never been a Jimmy Hart"?
No,
he's hilarious and always on. He's always on.
He's always on. It's funny because I've joked a lot about this era of wrestlers doing lots of cocaine, and Jimmy Hart seems like the one that's on it most, but I'm pretty sure he was like teetotal.
Was he?
I don't think he touched drugs or anything.
I've met Jimmy.
I've met Jimmy Hart numerous times. Actually, it wasn't that long ago. I did at a convention with him, and I was like, I think I was on the same table as him or like next to him. Either way, still super duper cool guy. Really, really fun. And here he's all over the show, and he's just full of energy, like a little firecracker, just the whole entire time.
He's been siding with losers, it seems. I don't spoiler but he doesn't seem to be.
Doesn't have a good night at the
He
office.
doesn't. Yeah, he hasn't had a very good run today.
Do you know what I thought you were going to mention? So there's a line that Roddy Piper says like at least 2 times in this pay-per-view that he was clearly very proud of. Did you pick up on it?
No, go on.
He goes, he's clearly very proud of this line because he says it, like I said, twice. He says, LOD stands for look out, dummy. Just to like no reaction from Brain or Monsoon. But he did it earlier.
He doesn't deserve a reaction.
Right. But he gets like no reaction. And I guess he assumes that like they haven't heard him properly.
Yeah. This is so good. They just couldn't have heard me. Right. It can't be because it's awful. Yeah.
Yeah. So then later he's like, do you know what LOD stands for? Look out, dummy. Did you not realize this? You didn't hear him say
I didn't know
this?
he did it twice. Oh no, remember you said it. No, he said it. But, oh man, that's awful. That's so funny.
What? Can you not think of something better for LOD than that?
I thought he was going to at least come up with a pun.
Right. But it doesn't even really make sense.
He just comes up with absolutely nothing and doubles down on it, which is even funnier. It wouldn't be funny actually if he didn't double down on it. The fact that he did it again is what makes it funny.
It is what makes it
ironically,
funny.
yeah.
It is. I don't know. Maybe you said about him being an actor earlier, but maybe he wouldn't have had much of a career as a stand-up comedian. But
I don't think he would.
Honestly, he would. But this only 7 minutes and 45 seconds. Obviously, has the no DQ stipulation added to the match. I'll be honest with you. I'm a fan of the Nasty Boys and I'm a fan of LOD. I kind of zoned out during this match. I don't know why. I just kind of like wasn't really that engaged into it. It's pretty much everything that you would expect. The crowd's still really hot. I feel like the Nasty Boys are really good workers, good heels. The one thing I wanted to bring up, so they take the Doomsday device finish at the end. I feel like all these wrestlers back in the day must have hated taking the Doomsday device.
You have to do that flip.
Yeah, like, well, and it's not really so much you have to do the flip. It's pretty much like they're flipping you. I can imagine just, especially like the Nasty Boys are big guys. Like, I can't imagine many of these guys enjoying taking this move. Like, it just seems kind of egregious, you know?
Yeah, because is there not much you can do to aid it? You just have to have the momentum of them.
You just hope
do it all for you. You just have to just deal with it.
You just hope they swing you over enough, so you don't land on your head. Right. Yeah.
When they get, the thing is, it's probably worth it because when they set up for it, the crowd know what's going on.
Well, the crowd loves it.
It just gets the
Oh, it's a very impressive move, and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I bet the wrestlers taking it never enjoyed taking it. I assume.
Oh, I can imagine.
I mean, this was a no disqualification match, and this is one of the first no disqualification matches I can remember in this kind of era of the WWF, at least.
They called it. I think they called it a street fight.
Oh, did they?
Something like that.
Oh, possibly.
But yeah, it's supposed to be no disqualification, which is fine. But then it begs the question: why does the referee try and enforce some? I guess that's because it's one of the first, like you said. Maybe they weren't really sure how it goes. But I feel like at one point he, the official tries to make sure. I can't remember who it was. Maybe one of the Legion of Doom to go back into their corner. It's like, well, if there's no disqualification, why are there even corners? You know, like
so. I had a feeling you were going to say this, and here's what I'd say to that. So I feel like people have kind of forgotten what no disqualification, I can't even say it. People have forgotten what no disqualification even means, right?
Right.
People just assume now, because of the way wrestling's gone, that no disqualification means, okay, we're going to do everything we want, and we can use weapons, and we can do everything. Like no disqualification to me should be different to like hardcore match, for example.
Rules, yeah.
I feel like the idea of no disqualification is match is still like regulated. There is kind of still rules, but this match will not end in a disqualification, if that makes sense.
If you don't agree. Yeah, okay.
Right. And I guess I get it. You could say, well, why would you not do this? But it's still supposed to be like a wrestling match in a wrestling company, a wrestling contest where
structured with stipulations,
right? It
just doesn't end if you go over them.
Or for example, if the Nasty Boys and Legion of Doom had a few matches before this, but they ended disqualifications because the Nasty Boys kept cheating or whatever, and so LOD couldn't get their big proper win over them. So like, okay, so this next one, there is not going to be disqualification. Like, no, you know what I mean?
I get it. That makes
But
sense.
I
Yeah.
don't think it makes sense to be like, oh, it's a no disqualification match. Okay, so now
All
everyone
bets are off. Yeah.
get the chainsaws out and get the the kitchen sink
That makes
out,
sense. Yeah.
and we're doing
All right.
like using all this furniture now to beat each other up with. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, that's convincing.
And I like
I
it.
get that.
and I like it more still how like there's no disqualification, but the heels are still trying to cheat like behind the referee's back and stuff. Like that's like more heat, I think. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does. That makes
Yeah.
sense to me. Yeah.
Whereas now they'd be like, it's no disqualification. Everyone's like, right, we're just gonna have a garbage wrestling match now where we just do, all furniture and everything else.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Makes
but
sense.
but like I said, for me, this is a bit of a lull in the show. And obviously, I love Legion of Doom, but I wasn't really that into this. What about you, Sam? What you
I
say?
actually, I didn't mind it. I also really love the Nasty Boys and really love the Legion of Doom, but unlike you, I wasn't feeling a low at that point. I actually did when I watched it. I only watched this pay-per-view once. I usually watch the other ones twice before we cover them. Once when I do take my notes, and then again shortly before we record, and then just do other notes. I only watched this one once, though. I did take a break, and then I came just before this match, got food, got coffee, and then came back to this one. Maybe it was that, but I actually didn't low at all. I found I liked the drinks tray, the what's the word? That thing full of drinks that they walk around, people buy, and just gets leathered with it. Wouldn't necessarily hurt too much, but it was a great visual, and it sets Bobby Heenan up with a little dig. Oh, that's the first bath he's had in a long time. Just like,
will you stop? Will you?
Yeah, and then
stop?
it's like, well, yeah, like it wasn't even that bad of a thing for him to say. Yet he gets told off. So there's enjoyment out of every little part of it. I actually didn't. The match itself wasn't a banger, but I didn't actually have a lull on it, and I don't think that's actually necessarily correlated to the fact that I really love the wrestlers involved, because the next match, we will get to. There's someone in there who I quite like. I didn't have the same feeling that I did for this match, so I just think it wasn't a bad match, and there was some good parts in there, and it still had energy. I didn't have any lull during watching this. I thought it was fine. Probably my third favorite in the night, maybe.
Well, we do see the tag team titles change hands here.
We do.
Bobby the Brain says that he's never seen a pay-per-view like this. It's the third title change tonight. So this is kind of going back. It's funny because we watched the Survivor Series 2002, which was also in MSG and also had a lot of title changes. And here we are 11 years earlier, MSG, and all these belts are changing. So kind of interesting. Yeah.
I never knew that the Nasty Boys were ever tag team champions. So
well, now you do.
Now I do. I got to see them lose it. Yeah, I really like those guys. I can't even explain what if someone said, "Oh, I'm not really into wrestling," like my mom, it's like, "Oh, what's their gimmick?" I wouldn't really be able to say. They're literally Nasty Boys.
You know what they are? They are. You remember Power Rangers?
Yeah, Bulk and Skull.
They're them like grown up, become pro wrestlers.
Yeah. Which is all you. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. They're just literally Nasty Boys,
like fat bullies, like
just fat
nasty
schlubby bullies. Yeah, which I think is just a great gimmick. And also like their spray paint. I can't explain it, but it looks like paint drips on
it's
all
like
their
spattered
glasses
paint,
and spattered paint on their glasses. Yeah, I just think it's a unique look.
No,
really
I think they look great.
Cool.
I like their Hasbro figures. I have them somewhere, so I'm a fan of
great
Boys.
Figures. Yeah. Very 90s look. Very. 90s
epitome
look.
of 90s.
Early 90s. Yeah. Awesome.
Shall we get to it, Sam? You're the moment you've all been waiting for. We're in episode. What episode is this now? Episode 5. And it took us 5 episodes to get to your number one guy. Erwin R. Shyster, IRS, takes on Greg Valentine and defeats him in 7 minutes and 7 seconds. If I thought the last match was a low in the show, then this one nearly saw me off completely.
This was,
I thought about ending the podcast during this match.
We can't keep doing this. And again, I had a long break and came back to it just the match before, and I was lulling in this, and it has one. Just for the record, he's my favorite gimmick. Yes. I'd say my favorite wrestler is Goldust, but IRS is my second favorite. But he's definitely my favorite gimmick. I just think it's absolutely incredible because I'm a cheap heat kind of guy. So just having the tax man as a wrestler is just for that era as well. It's just the best thing. I just think it's the absolute best thing.
This era is so funny, like two policemen fighting, the loser goes to jail, and then we've got like a tax man wrestling. He's wrestling in a tie and braces or whatever.
Braces. His briefcase is by the corner.
Right. The funniest or the best part of this match was like the bell rings, IRS and Greg Valentine are circling each other, and the commentators goes kind of quiet. Then all of a sudden, Bobby the Brain goes, "This will be a good match," and it's like. I was thinking it definitely won't be, and I'm pretty convinced that he's just ribbing completely.
Oh, you reckon he's taking?
I think so.
Michael. Okay,
oh,
maybe.
For sure. He wasn't dumb. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, true. Yeah, this was awful, man.
Well, so I wondered why this match was on the card, and
even on the card, yeah.
I think they brought in IRS, and they were kind of trying to push him as like a mid card heel. Greg Valentine was a big star in like the 70s and I guess the 80s. He's still wrestling here. He's obviously slowed down a lot, way past his prime, but I guess still has some kind of stock with the audience. So it was to give IRS that kind of mid-card win or over a relatively established name. It seems like they just put this match on the card to kind of bring the crowd down before the main event. So they had the big title win with the Legion of Doom, bring them down somewhat with IRS and Greg Valentine to go into the big Hogan match. But this was I mean, it's a tough spot. And this was the first time in the show the crowd had been super hot all night. This match, the crowd could not give two craps.
If their goal, like you said, was to bring the crowd and the audience down, they achieved it.
Well, they call this the popcorn match, the match before the main event.
Where they can go to the bathroom and get their popcorn, get a hot dog and come back.
Yeah, bathroom. Either the piss break match or the popcorn match. I guess the popcorn match is the nicer way of saying it. But this is definitely that, yeah. IRS just, I mean, he did the promo at the start. What did he say? He basically just pay your taxes.
Yeah, which is all he does, which I love. So it's just another one of those.
How can I get booze? Well, just tell people to pay their taxes.
What does everybody hate? Paying taxes. That all right? I'm gonna be the tax man. I think it's genius. But.
Well, I think Vince had some problem, or maybe Vince hated the IRS, and he's done this thing throughout the years that when he has like a beef or something, he kind of like puts it in the storyline. He did that with the Right to Censor sort of years later, but here, dislikes the IRS, or he hated dentists, and that's how he came up with the dentist gimmick for
Isaac
Jacobs, so Isaac Yankem, but here, a tax man. It just makes you wonder as well, like what. Okay, so there's a taxman that also wrestles, but he's going to stay in taxman form whilst he wrestles, and he's even going to wear his taxman uniform when he does a pro wrestling match. Like, kind of a little bit odd, is it not?
Oh, it's incredibly odd.
Or the policemen, they got to be in their police outfits.
The policeman, he's in
when
his
they
police,
wrestle. Yeah, that's all they wear. They're like Bart Simpson. They just have one
just
outfit.
Their closet is just I think it's hilarious. I really do. I just find it so funny. I did think though that I can't remember what he was trying to get. Was it a figure four leg lock at the end? But then when he tried to apply it, IRS countered and rolled him up in a small package, which I thought was a nice little counter.
Yeah,
I just thought it was an odd way to win.
Oh, I quite liked it.
You liked it, did you? Okay.
Yeah. I thought I quite liked it. I
thought it was clever and it's a nice little counter, but I didn't expect it to really hold someone down for three. I just thought it was
he caught him by surprise,
They're true. That's the whole point of it. Yeah.
Greg Valentine thought he had the match won. He was applying his special hold. He's not thinking about losing. Then all of a sudden he thinks he's winning. Oh God, I got tripped up.
Yes,
1,
that's
2,
true.
3.
I will say his shoulder was blatantly up, but let's not worry about that. Valentine's shoulder was clearly up.
The referee knew it was up. It was just like, let's just get this over and done with.
Out of it. Yeah.
It's like, 1,
There's
2,
no
3.
way I'm gonna. Yeah.
He's like, my shoulder was up. No, they definitely wasn't.
It's definitely down.
Get out of here. So next up, we see a backstage promo with Hulk Hogan and the Warrior. This is just like crazy men shouting. Warrior is just talking complete gibberish. Hogan says that when he won the WWF title, it changed the course of wrestling, and says that if they don't win tonight, then the history could change again. And the really bizarre bit in this kind of end of the promo, Warrior kind of like grabs Hogan's head and puts their heads together, and Hogan looks pretty uncomfortable. So it's pretty funny visual here with Hogan and Warrior. But
they're both completely yelling. Incidentally, I've only ever seen them as rivals. This is the first time I've ever tuned in and they're on the same team. I just thought I'd bring that up because I can just picture, when I think of those two together, I think of them in matches against each other, not with each other.
Sure.
But yeah, they're both screaming, they're both shouting. Everything they are saying, not only is just the decibel level too high, but none of it makes any sense. Something like the venom of, if I get bitten, it's not toxic, it fuels the gas. I can't even remember what they were saying. Like, none of it made any sense. They're just yelling. I loved it, by the way. That's not a criticism.
That's the thing. Like, the more we do this show, I'm sure the Warrior's going to pop up more and more. And all these promos, none of them make sense. Like, he's talking about space and all these different weird things, but like, he does it with such intensity and charisma that you just kind of like grip to the screen, I guess, and he just
kind of get away with it. Yeah,
right. It didn't really matter what he said. Like, no one actually stopped to think, what is he actually saying? It just kind of like, look at this piece going on, you know. So it seemed to work for him, despite not making any sense whatsoever.
He's absolutely massive as a person.
He looks insane.
Absolutely massive. I never actually knew he was shorter than Hogan though until I seen them face to face. I always in my head imagine him taller.
Well, Hogan's tall as hell. Hogan's
like
he's like 6'6" or something. He's super tall. Yeah. Warrior's still tall.
No, he's still tall, but I always picture it almost like a David versus Goliath thing when I think of those two squaring off. But actually, Hogan's actually much bigger than Warrior. It's crazy. That just goes to show how massive everyone is.
Right, exactly.
About the first match.
Right.
The smallest guy is Ricky Steamboat.
Right, exactly. Out of 6 guys. Yeah, no, Warrior was a little shorter than Hogan, but far more jacked and ripped than Hogan. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So let's get to it. Here we are. The main event, or maybe not the main event, but at least the main event wrestling part of the show, match-wise of the show. Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior defeat Sergeant Slaughter, General Adnan, and Colonel Mustafa, with Sid Justice as a special guest referee in a handicap match in 12 minutes and 40 seconds. Now, SummerSlam, one of the biggest shows of the year, as we talked about earlier. Obviously, your top guys here are Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
Sergeant Slaughter, this was basically the end of his run as a Iraqi sympathizer. They trying to, I guess, capitalize, I guess is the word.
On the Gulf War.
On the Gulf War, which, you know.
It's insane when you think about it.
Pretty insane. Again, there's a lot of stuff. This is 1991. A lot of this stuff just wouldn't stand well in today's world. General Adnan was, I guess he actually was from Iraq, so he was like an old territory worker. I'm not too familiar with him at all. What was his real name again? Sheikh Adnan, I want to say. I guess they just brought him in here to make it more legitimate that the guys are from Iraq, I guess. Because we also have the Iron Sheik here, who was a former WWF champion, legend Iron Sheik.
Who everyone
knows. He's from Iran. But here they're calling him Colonel Mustafa, and I guess saying that he's from Iraq. So this is just all over the place. It is worth noting this was basically the end of, I guess, Ultimate Warrior's first run with the WWF, because so a month leading in, I'm not sure if you knew this, but a month leading into this pay-per-view, the Warrior wrote a letter to Vince McMahon basically threatening to no-show this main event and this show unless he was paid $550,000, which he claimed is owed to him from his work at WrestleMania 7. So basically had Vince McMahon in a very awkward position, awkward place.
Basically a ransom.
Well, yes, because Vince, they promoted this main event. Back then, they used to promote main events for months and months, and all the artwork had been done, all this stuff. So I guess Vince basically agreed to pay it just to save the show. And basically, as soon as the Ultimate Warrior got through the curtain backstage, apparently, as soon as he came back, Vince McMahon just fired him on the spot.
Wow.
Vince McMahon later went on to say, like, he couldn't wait to fire the Ultimate Warrior. So that's kind of the story of this match. This is also Sid Justice's debut, essentially, in the company. I think he debuted on TV where they announced he was going to be the special guest referee. So debuting someone as a special guest referee never really works. And I do wonder, because before this, he was Sid Vicious. And I guess they didn't want him to be Sid Vicious. He obviously took that from the Sex Pistols. But I wondered if they just called him Sid Justice just so he could be a special guest referee for this match. I do not know.
That's actually a good possibility. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
It is. But this match, Sergeant Slaughter is way past his prime here. Must be in his mid-40s. You've got Iron Sheik, who's beyond past his prime years.
Yeah.
And then General Adnan, who's like 50-something here. These guys can barely bump and everything else. It's saying something when, like, Hogan is the best worker in the match, kind of by far as well. He's the workhorse in the match is Hogan. Yeah, this match was not great.
It wasn't great. In Hogan's defense, have you actually seen clips of him actually wrestling, like in Japan, where he couldn't just get by with his Hulkamania stuff and not doing much, where he's actually putting the work in? He's not bad.
No, Hogan. No, when I said when Hogan's the best worker, I wasn't trying to critique him. Hogan, his run in WWF is more kind of stick and more kind of sizzle rather than the steak.
Yeah.
But no, Hogan, like, I always get kind of upset when people say, "Oh, Hogan wasn't a good worker." I'm like, well, what are you basing that on? Like, if he's a worker, like this, the only thing we can, what's the word I'm looking for? We can only look at the metrics, and we can only look at the business to determine whether someone's a good wrestler or not, right? Because
I think he was good for business,
right? Exactly. So it's like, what are you basing that on? Like, okay, he doesn't do like lots of athletic maneuvers,
high flying,
right. But like, the people cared, the people loved Hogan, and the people came out and paid big money to come see Hogan, and he drew more money than probably anyone. So to say he's not a good worker, I think is kind of a little bit ridiculous.
Disingenuous. I agree with you on that one. That
being said, I can kind of tell why they decided to go with the wedding for the main event of the show rather than this match. Like, it's bad when they say we're gonna have a wedding angle be the main event.
We've got to save it with a wedding.
Right, they choose that over this 6-man tag.
Well, okay, I'm good. We're positive, right?
Okay, go on.
So, how long did you say the match was?
12 minutes and 40 seconds.
I feel like a lot happened in it. You don't think it was very jam-packed? I kind of do.
Well, it's one of those things that got me thinking. It's kind of like, so they have this match, and it's all based on the fact that Warrior and Hogan are super duper over, and they've done this big storyline with, it's like we're going to get all this heat because we've got these Iraqi sympathizers and everything else. And it's kind of like, you can sizzle stuff up like so much. It's like you could put so many smoke and mirrors to hide stuff. And if you have a really, really good storyline that the people care about, you can kind of get away with anything. But this kind of showed that no amount of sizzle or storyline or heat can kind of like, it doesn't make up for if the ring work is just like really not good, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it does make sense. I do. Okay, first of all, I know you said they're past their prime, like maybe physically, but Sympathizer Sergeant Slaughter is my favorite Sergeant Slaughter. Even when I was a kid, I found that hilarious. Like, I don't even know how old I would have been, but I actually think I was older than when this was on. I think it was looking through the annuals and like looking, just merchandise stuff and just seeing him from that. I thought it was a very funny idea.
Right. Yeah.
So I've always kind of had a soft spot for that. And that might help me going into this match, but I feel like a lot did happen. Like the
Well-
ring work wasn't great, but a lot did happen in that amount of time. I liked practically everyone involved, but yeah, it wasn't the greatest match. So I'm not as hard on this as maybe you thought I was going to be. It wasn't. It wasn't awful.
Yeah,
It just wasn't very good for a. Was this supposed to be the main event, right?
Well, it was
apart
the
from,
main
apart
event.
from the wedding.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for a main event, it's what they call their second biggest pay-per-view of the year. When you put it like that, it wasn't good.
Right.
It was reasonably entertaining. Some weird stuff happened in it, but
I just don't think, like, I mean, Sergeant Slaughter, you could say, one thing, but, like, there's no way that at this point the Iron Sheik or General Adnan should be anywhere near a pay-per-view main event. Like, no way.
No, they shouldn't. No.
And
yeah. Maybe as managers, maybe on the floor.
Yeah.
But not. No, I agree with you there for sure. Yeah.
Well, because I guess they did Warrior and Hogan at WrestleMania. Oh God, 7, as a double babyface main event, and I guess it didn't do so well in the buy rates. So Vince wasn't a big fan of doing babyface versus babyface matches. And then Warrior had his run as the champion, and the business was kind of down. It wasn't going as well as Vince would have hoped. So, of course, the whole thing is like, oh, we need to get the belt back to Hogan. So they basically had Sergeant Slaughter become this Iraqi sympathizer who then defeated Ultimate Warrior at the Royal Rumble to get the belt on him so he could go to WrestleMania and Hogan could challenge Sergeant Slaughter for the championship and win the belt back and kind of, the America versus Iraq kind of storyline and get the belt back on Hogan. So Sergeant Slaughter obviously just like a transitional champion to get the belt from Warrior to Hogan, and obviously gave him this gimmick and everything else. But yeah, I can kind of tell why business was down for this, because I don't think people were, jumping out of their seats to watch these guys in the main event. Like, this seems like it would be an okay main event, like on a house show or something, just like, the good guys beat the foreign menaces, but main event of a pay-per-view, not so much.
Like a TV episode, just like on Raw or something. You're like, okay.
And they obviously knew this and tried to jazz it up with having like Psycho Sid.
Yeah,
as the referee, but
is he going to betray? Is he going to do this?
Right,
thing?
but he didn't end up really playing much into the match anyway. So yeah, the match made in hell. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I will say this: so like they brought Sid in here from WCW, and Sid you look at him and he just looks incredible, and you assume he's just everything Vince would love in a wrestler.
Want in a wrestler, yeah,
right. And the story goes that it's kind of when McMahon first saw Sid, he fell in love with him and kind of wanted him to be the next Hogan. He's always looking for the next Hogan. Thought Warrior would be the next Hogan and Lex Luger could be the next Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Sid. And I guess he had the meeting with Sid when he was going to bring him in. And he explained this to Sid, and Sid was like, "Oh no, I should be a bad guy. You want like I'm better as a bad guy."
Mm-hmm.
And I guess people kind of knock Sid for that because it's like Vince is literally offering you to be the next Hogan, and you're telling him you want to be a bad guy. But I will say, I personally think Sid is much better as a bad guy, or at least the bad guy. Like I thought he was best in like that 96, 97, when he's the bad guy, but the people still cheer him anyway because he's a badass. I think he was really cool and excelled and was great at that, rather than like here, like after the match where Hogan asks Sid to pose with him and stuff. He doesn't seem too confident with it.
No,
and
that made me laugh though.
Like he doesn't look too comfortable with it, and he just kind of it didn't seem to suit him, kind of being that like say your prayers, take your vitamins type baby face.
No, that does make sense, and you can kind of see that. But that kind of added to the humor of them just started posing for almost no reason right at the end. Just made me laugh. I think he was in his referee attire up until that point, and then they just took it off to do a posing segment, almost for no reason.
Hogan ripped his shirt off.
I don't remember. Oh, yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Yeah, Hogan ripped off. Well, that's the thing. Hogan wins his matches, and then his music plays for 20 minutes and he poses the
Yes,
whole
he
time.
does, and he's posing.
Hogan must pose. That's the quote. Like Hogan must pose.
But then
after every
Sid's
match.
coming in with his thing on top. It was just funny because I imagined, like, if you have a girlfriend or a wife or something who's just not into wrestling, you like classic wrestling, and she's in the other room doing whatever she's doing, and she comes in just at the end of that match, and you're just sat there and you're just watching these two guys going. that she'd just be like,
whilst Real American is playing.
Real American, yeah.
But there's not much to say about this match, really. If you noticed, the Warrior wasn't involved in the pose down because they got him out of there, and that's when he was getting fired, I guess.
Oh, he's already literally getting fired in real time
as they're posing in the ring.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, the actual ring work was pretty bad. Like the back rakes and all these things that no one cares about. Yeah.
Well, just the guys trying to take bumps, just like falling over, just like,
it was
very phony, very phony. So next we see a replay of Macho Man asking Elizabeth, to marry him. And I always found this really funny. I've seen this clip so many times, but she answers, "Oh yeah." It's like, no, his catchphrase is "ooh yeah," but she says "oh yeah." It's just like, what? No, it's "ooh yeah." And how does she not know?
Maybe that's why it only lasted like a year.
Wow. So they obviously were doing this marriage segment, which I guess we'll get into now. In reality, Macho Man and Liz had been married since for years previous before this, 1984.
Oh, really?
I think they got married. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And at this point, their actual marriage is starting to kind of fall apart. I think they end up getting legit shoot divorced in 1992. It's like a year later.
Almost the same year. Yeah.
Right. So, but I did wonder. I didn't really understand the whole. Let's have them do a wedding. And it's funny because they do the wedding, of course, and we're going to get into it. But typically, wrestling weddings, you know what you're going to get into. It's never, ever straight.
I was going to say, am I wrong to be expecting some angle or it to be broken up or something? And it just didn't happen. And I'm not necessarily saying that was bad to not happen. It was a nice subversion of expectations, but it was just not legit, but it was just, it was just a wedding.
Yes, they just had
just a wedding.
What's funny, when I watched this, I actually got a bit confused because I'd obviously seen this years ago, and I'd remembered that Jake the Snake got involved with the wedding, and then we watched it and nothing happened. I was like, oh, what happened? Anyway, so what I remember happening, after the wedding, they filmed a wedding party, which they showed the next week on TV. It was on the TV episode after this pay-per-view. Basically, they show the wedding party, and Macho Man and Liz are opening gifts, and they open a box, and a real life snake pops out. His head pops out, and Liz is screaming and everything else. The next thing you know, Jake Roberts, the Snake, and Undertaker come in, and they're beating up Macho Man and scaring Liz with the snake, and it's all kind of carnage and everything else. But so they did that on TV the week later. For whatever reason, they kept this whole wedding straight on the pay-per-view. And there's really not that whole much to say about this. Liz looks beautiful. They take the ring ropes down. They set up the ring with platforms to have a wedding.
Yeah, they kind of take it seriously.
Yeah, they have a straight up wedding and just kind of go off the air this is great. This is amazing. And we touched upon it earlier. Bobby the Brain keeps trying to speak, and Roddy Piper is threatening to be able to say, "Don't you dare ruin this. Don't you shut your mouth. You shut your mouth." He's going crazy. Don't ruin the moment. And he's going absolutely wild at Bobby the Brain, who just wants to make little snide comments here and there. But kind of an odd choice. And I don't but maybe in their head, think about this. Macho Man and Liz had been on TV as a couple for years. Mm-hmm. And the audience fell in love with them. And, the audience absolutely, they were very endearing to the crowd, and people loved Elizabeth. And of course, Macho Man was huge. When they do a royal wedding, for example, it does massive TV ratings, right?
Yeah.
People want to watch the royal wedding, right?
Yeah.
It does half the country is going to watch the royal wedding, right? So maybe they just thought that, these are two big personas. If we do a shoot wedding, people are going to pay, because it's on pay-per-view, remember, going to pay to see Macho Man and Elizabeth's wedding. Maybe that was the theory behind it.
Yeah, I mean, soap operas, at least in the UK, as we learned from Barney in media studies, if the only real big things that ever happen in a soap opera, for example, is a birth, a marriage, or a death, it's one of those things that is held as, oh, we have to watch this for some reason. And maybe WWF thought, we'll get into that. This is not my favorite WWF wedding. My one was when Stephanie McMahon was drugged and Triple H took her through the drive-in. Do you remember that?
Of course, in Las
Vegas. Yeah, that's my favorite. That's the very romantic.
God,
this one's more traditional. Albeit in a wrestling ring.
I will say this: Macho Man looks incredible in his outfit. Like, just looks so well, and it got me thinking. Like, Macho Man always had different outfits, and they always looked incredible. And that was kind of a big part of the Macho Man persona, just having all these amazing, cool outfits. And I was thinking that he must have just spent
so much of his salary,
right? Like, he must have spent so much money on just constant
putting it back into
costumes,
his business,
right? Like all the time, like
But that's cool though. I wouldn't say that's a waste of money. I mean, in fact, I'd say you're no slouch in that department, right? I feel like
I've spent a lot of money
the best you can. Yeah,
I've spent a lot of money over the years on wrestling gear.
So you can probably relate. Like, I guess it's worth the money if you're going to be in the public eye or on the show. You don't want to look like a dress up, like a Halloween store outfit, right? So yeah, I mean, you must have done. Yeah.
Well,
what do you reckon's the most expensive thing you've ever worn to a match? What do you reckon, man?
That's a good question. Just let me think about that before I get into it. I feel like Macho Man maybe has like the same philosophy as me. So like back here, Macho Man's not the biggest guy at all. You see all these other guys that are massive. So he's obviously thought, okay, how can I be much more larger than life? Right. And so that's basically what I did with me. It's like, I'm a small guy, but I want to be a main eventer. So I'm like, okay, what can I control? I'm like, well, I'm going to make myself just larger than life. That's why I have these big elaborate entrances and ring jackets and all this stuff. But in terms of most expensive outfit or gear, the wings that I wore at Wrestle Kingdom, Tokyo Dome, Wrestle Kingdom 12, I want to say, they cost a lot. I think they were like after all delivery and then like having to take them to Japan and everything else, that probably cost close to like $3,000 or something. But I think the most expensive is actually kind of a funny story. So I'm not going to name any names here. In fact, I don't think I can actually remember the name. But so basically, a gear maker I was talking to told me they'd really like to do some work with me, and maybe I don't know if he said make me a ring jacket or I suggested a ring jacket. But anyway, he said about let's make you a ring jacket. I was like, yeah, great, cool. And so I told him all the stuff that I like and everything else. And then he said, this is where I made my mistake. He said, okay, what's your budget for the ring jacket? And I stupidly just said, well, I was like, I don't really care about that. Just make me like an awesome jacket. I just want like an amazing jacket. So anyway, then I then get the jacket. Okay. Before he'd sent me an invoice or anything else, he sent me the jacket. He hadn't charged me for it yet. And it came and it was very impressive. It had like Swarovski crystals over it, all these spikes, like feathers and all this stuff. It was really, really cool. Was it the greatest jacket of all time? Probably not. But like to look at it and hold it, it was like, oh, you can tell this is an expensive thing. Yeah. But also it's a ring jacket. So like that doesn't really like mean that much. If that makes sense, it's just got to look like super impressive, you know? Anyway, at the time, I think it was like a Ring of Honor show, and Cody Rhodes was there, and he said to me, oh, where'd you get that from? And I told him, he was like, ooh. I was like, what do you mean, ooh? And he said, oh, they screwed me over. They overcharged me for something. He's like, how much he charged you for that? And I was like, oh, he hasn't charged me yet. And he's like, oh, you're in trouble. And I was like, what, really? So I then go message the guy. I'm like, hey, can you, well, I said guy or girl. And I said, can you send me the invoice? I said, okay. So they sent me the invoice for this ring jacket. Comes through $5,000 for my entrance jacket. And I was like, dude, what the hell? Like, brother, $5,000? He's like, you said there was no budget. I'm like, bro, like, okay, I guess, but like, dude, I figured when it would got to like maybe $2,000, you might have said, hey, it's getting to this now. Do you want me to continue or do you want me to stop? Do you know what I mean? Or at least give me some kind of vague idea. I mean, at this point, the maximum I'd probably spent on a ring jacket was 1,000 or maybe 1,500, maybe. Like $5,000 for a ring jacket.
Oh my God.
And then I'm in an awkward position because obviously I've got it already, you know, and it's like, he's made it, you know what I mean? I think we did quite a bit of back and forth, and like when I wore it on pay-per-view, the shoulder pads actually, like one of them like fell off because it didn't have like proper, it would like Velcro on, but realistically it needed to be like studded in or whatever.
Yeah.
So I kind of had that gripe. And so I think I ended up, you know, we worked out a deal in the end. I think I paid just a little bit less than $5,000, but still way up there. So yeah, that was a bit of a stinger. And, you know, obviously I didn't use that gear maker. I get it. Like I said, it was a really cool jacket. Was it worth $5,000? Not to me, it wasn't. Do you know what I mean?
But you learned your lesson.
Well, I did, and it's funny because I remember one time a fan was in Vegas, a wrestling fan, and they'd like made me a jacket as like a gift.
Oh, sweet.
And
that's really cool.
Yeah, and like I think they'd literally just gone to a thrift store and found a jacket and then like customized it and painted it up and made it all themselves. And they gave it to me as a gift, and it was like, I was like, oh, this is super cool. This is awesome. So then I was like, do you know what? Like, would you make me another one? Like, and I'll pay you, you know? And they're like, oh yeah, of course. And then like, they ended up making me like a good 4 or 5 jackets, and I'd always pay them, you know, I'd ask them how much do you want, and I'd pay them well. And they were like some of my favorite jackets, and they were like the cheaper ones, you know, like much cheaper. They're just kind of like more kind of punk rock, like they made them themselves, and I really enjoyed them. So yeah, it's funny. Like, I'm a big believer in investing in your character, and like things like gear and stuff, you can control that. And I know not everyone's got loads of money. I get that. But at the same time, like you said, like if you're going to be seen by whether it's hundreds or thousands or millions of people, you're going to want to look your best. Do you know what I mean? So it's an investment. If I became a plumber tomorrow, I'd probably have to spend, you know, 10 grand on a van and 10 grand on materials, you know, so it's a $20,000 investment. On a wrestler, you don't really have that much stuff to invest in other than your gear. So I think you can justify spending a good amount of money to look your very best. And like at the end of the day, we're supposed to be larger than life superstars. We're supposed to be rock stars. I don't want to go see Madonna or Mick Jagger or whoever just dressed in clothes from
a t-shirt, Target.
Dressed for less. Yeah, exactly. So I'm a big believer in that. And obviously, clearly here, Macho Man's just
has the same ethic. Yeah,
right, exactly.
For sure, yeah,
100%. But yeah, this whole thing, it basically just ends. They get married, everyone's happy, and confetti and balloons fall from the ceiling, and we go off air as the happy couple got an uninterrupted wedding. So that's kind of a swerve.
Until you said the next week.
Until they show the next week that after the wedding, Jake the Snake and Undertaker turned up.
Yeah,
right. So yeah, but yeah, that was the show. Did you have any more thoughts about this wedding at all?
No, not really. I just thought, like I said, when all the kids are coming out with the ring, all of that, I just thought, oh, they're really gearing up for some kind of
right.
And it was just well, not a real marriage, but like an earnest, just straight down the middle. No, they're getting married in the ring, and then it ended. And I feel like people kind of did enjoy it. They did seem to like simmer down when it halfway through. Maybe they were also like me expecting some sort of fracas and it didn't happen. I don't know, but it did just seem like they went kind of all out and were honest about it, straight down the middle. Just it's just a wedding, no funny business. You like these two characters and they're having a nice time.
Right.
Which is kind of nice. It was a little bit odd.
Well, there'd been a couple on TV for years, so
It's
maybe
just like
thought
the,
they needed to pay
80s.
off just having a
Mhm.
nice wedding. Do you know what I mean? No
Do you think it?
tomfoolery.
Do you think it worked for you? Like, was this your thing? Or?
People still remember this and talk
Yeah.
about it, so
So
I guess
from that sense, then yeah, right.
Yeah, the one thing that was really annoying actually was the video package beforehand. They'd on Peacock, they'd dubbed over the music. The original song was completely different. They put some modern song on it over the top of it. And I was like, what? I was really looking forward to seeing
Another Peacock strikes again for the
Peacock,
music.
the cock strikes again.
Yeah,
I want to make a T-shirt that says "F the cock." What do you think?
I reckon we should.
Should we?
And I feel like we're not the only two people in the world who can't stand Peacock. For me, the worst part is when, for wrestling specifically, you need a good rewind, a very thorough rewind. Because if you see like spot something, you're like, oh, cool. You just literally go, you're like, oh, I'm going to hit back play, just as quick as you can. And you've gone back about 3 minutes.
Oh, dude. You can, like, for example, if I want to watch a match, let's say I want to watch the main event of WrestleMania 17, I've got to you try and fast forward to the last match, but you got to sit through all these commercials that would be before. It's just a complete mess. And that whole series 2 episode 17 thing, give over. Complete Peacock is crap. I'm sorry. If you people want us to release shirts that say F the cock, let us know. Because I think I want to wear that shirt on every episode of this podcast.
When you pause it, so you might want to pause it for whatever reason to actually see something that's a still. They just instantly throw up a full screen static ad. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not kidding. During the Brett and Mr. Perfect match, that thing just by mistake, like the app made a mistake, just put on a static ad over the finish, but I wasn't paused. I've got a photo of it. We can put it on Instagram. You can see that it's actually playing, and and it was literally the end of that match, and I was like, what?
Well, I
haven't seen it before as well.
Right.
I haven't seen the match before, and it was really gearing up, and then I can't remember what it was. I think it was Sonic Drive-Thru. Just this thing just popped up.
It's always Sonic.
It's always Sonic, isn't it? There. And I just couldn't believe it. Then I have to rewind, but because it's Peacock, I've rewound 3 minutes.
So you can't just typically if you pause something, obviously sometimes you want to pause it to walk away and do something, but sometimes I want to pause to get a closer look at something. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or
and
catch a moment.
You with it. Yep.
But you pause it and it doesn't hold the screen. It just comes up with an ad straight away. So that just ruins any chance of me just pausing something to, you know what I mean?
To see what's happening. It's appalling. Yeah.
F the cock. F the cock. So,
all right.
Sam, SummerSlam 1991. What star rating are you giving this show?
I'm going to give it. I'm torn because how I do stars is basically a percentage of which I'm entertained. So if I'm entertained thoroughly throughout 100% of it, like I was Survivor Series 2002, then to me that's 5 stars.
Yeah.
If I'm only entertained through half of it, then that would be 3 stars or 2 stars. And there was a lot of dull moments in this and a lot of bad matches. So I'm torn between giving it a 2 or a 3. The only reason why I'm going to give it a 3 is because that Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect match was super entertaining. So I am going to deviate from my normal standard and factor that in and raise it to a 3 out of 5, which you may think is a little low still, but that is my honest thoughts. Marty, what star rating would you give it? Or do you want to criticize my star rating?
No, I'm not going to criticize because I actually kind of agree. This is a funny thing with star ratings, right? So the scale of star rating is between 1 and 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but you can't give something, because I was going to say this. So if it's 1 to 5, then 2.5 should be
50%.
average, right?
Yes.
But actually, thinking about it, I guess it's not, right? Because 1 star, you can't do 0 stars, huh?
No, you can't do 0 stars. I mean, some people might do 0 stars. And I also don't like half stars. I'd always round up or round down depending.
Oh, I
for
feel
me
like we
personally,
need the half
because
star.
well, if you do a half star, then it might as well just be out of 10.
It should, yeah, no, totally.
You know,
But that's not the way.
by that point.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
get that.
So
But like I was saying, but you can't do 0 stars now. It's like it starts at 1 star. So is 2.5 average or not? Or is that closer to the worst?
well, and that's the thing. If you were allowing 0 stars, then 2 is the average. But 2 seems low.
No. 2.5 would be the average.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, on a whole rating, we would say that 3 is an average. If you factor,
But no,
if you factor in
2.5
0,
is the
then 2.
average.
Yeah, but I don't do half.
Yeah, no, but you're just making it way even more confusing than it already is. That is a thing, like the half ratings or whatever. All I'm trying to say is, my point is typically, if you give something, like if I see a restaurant and it's got a 2.5 rating, I think that's not a good restaurant, right?
But it
And I'm
should
sure,
be average, yeah.
right? And if someone says, "Oh, Meltzer gave that 2.5 stars," they can be like, "That's not a good star rating." But
Right.
should that not be average? Do you know what I mean?
It
Like,
should be average, yeah.
right. But or is there no such thing as 0 stars? So 2.5 is not average. I don't know. I guess I should probably just get to my point with the show.
I think we're trying to be too objective. Let's just be totally subjective. How do you feel? How does this make you feel?
Overall,
Stars.
I thoroughly enjoyed it because of the bright characters, because of the hot crowd, because of I mean, there was a few really great things on the show and a lot of the backstage promos and stuff. I really enjoyed, and a lot of it is just nostalgia, just seeing a lot of these wrestlers that I kind of grew up watching, seeing the bright personalities and everything else. There was quite a few lulls in the show and things that I weren't too interested in at the same time, and that the main event 6-man was like ugh, and the wedding to end it all was kind of like and that IRS
and then you had the
match.
IRS match before that, so the
ending,
the good stuff was kind of front loaded.
It was, and I love the 6-man tag at the start. I really got
that was cool.
I got such a kick out of that, and obviously loved Brett and Mr. Perfect. So I would probably give the whole thing. I'd probably just have to agree with 3 stars. I think, yeah, 3 stars.
Okay, so it gets 6 stars out of 5 altogether. Not bad, not bad.
Not
Still
bad
behind.
rating.
I think it's behind. It's behind Stampede, which we did last week. It's behind
Survivor Series.
Yeah.
It's got to be better.
It still
than
wasn't.
WCW
It's still
Thunder.
watchable. Yeah. Oh, we couldn't even. Well, actually, if you think about it, by how I factor in the star system, where it's just based on a percentage of how entertained I was.
Yes.
By that, I guess that episode of Thunder was 5 stars because it was always entertaining. In a bad way.
I guess so.
That's why we refuse to rate it, though.
Right.
Favorite match of the night. I have a feeling I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Match of the night.
It was obviously Brett and Mr. Perfect, but a close second was the 6-man tag. The first, the opening 6-man tag. Yeah. I guess it's for me. For you.
Brett. Yeah, for me, Brett and Perfect, and that was also a good one. But for me, it was Brett and Mr. Perfect.
All-time classic. Well, I think that's what this show is going to be remembered for the most. That classic IC title run and the start of Bret Hart's singles push. So
that was great. Least favorite match of the night.
Actually, it's a toss-up between the IRS match and the Hogan. No, it's not. It's the IRS match. Yeah, it was brutal.
Yep, IRS match, which pains me, but we've got to be fair.
Or the wedding. The wedding's not a match, I guess, but no, yeah. But overall, like I said, enjoyable. Definitely nice to go back to the early 90s. Definitely want to do more of the early 90s and this sort of time period as well, so we can see how everything else holds up compared to this. But in terms of plugs and everything else, guys, if you're not already, please follow us on the Instagram at The Villain Pod. We're putting on fun content on there, and we're also rocking things on TikTok. You don't stop. I don't really understand TikTok. We only have less than 100 followers, but for some reason we seem to be getting lots of views on TikTok. So people are viewing but not hitting the follow button, and I probably don't even understand how to hit the follow button on TikTok. So I completely sympathize with you all. I don't understand this TikTok at all, but I was like, is it worth doing? Oh, I guess we might as well make the handle at least. And then, okay, well, we've got the content anyway. Let's put it on the TikTok. And it seems to be kind of taking off. And like some of you might be saying, okay, well, we already see this stuff on Instagram. But the way I try and make it different is sometimes like I'll put stuff on TikTok first before it hits like Instagram or YouTube or anything else. And sometimes we'll make like TikTok specific content. So it's definitely worth hitting us up on TikTok. And of course, our YouTube channel, same handle across the board at The Villain Pod. Check us out on YouTube. We're hoping to grow our numbers there. And we've been talking about maybe doing some Chilling with the Villain Pod lives on YouTube as well. So if you want to see us go live, maybe we'll do it during a current pay-per-view. Who knows? But we're looking to expand. We're looking to grow. So let us know what you'd like to see from us. And of course, if you're listening to this show today and you made it this far, hit us up on the old Instagram and let us know what you thought of the show, your favorite parts, and maybe the parts that you did not like. And we will not be offended. We're not easily offended here at Chillin' with the Villain. I've heard much worse, so you can't hurt my feelings.
Do you have anything personal to plug? Not personal. Like, we don't want to know what you're selling out of your garage or on Facebook Marketplace, but anything going on?
Got the Villain jerseys. You've been asking for the jerseys for years and years. So depending on when you listen to this, they might be on sale already or they'll be coming up. So I'm still not 100% sure on the timeline, but there's a good chance they could be on sale by now. So just keep an eye on Instagram. Everyone asks me questions like, when are you wrestling next? When are you doing this? It's like, just go on the Instagram. I can't remember all this stuff. So that's where you can find me. That's where, if I'm doing any social media, me personally, that's where I'll be doing it. Sam, have you got yourself an Instagram yet?
I have not, but I do have something to plug.
Oh, wow. Go on.
So I gave In Your House, the PlayStation 1 game, a bit of a negative comment in last week's episode, but you seem to actually really enjoy the game. So I actually went back and revisited it and thought it was interesting enough to put a little video review together, which is going to be, it's not finished yet, but by the time this episode comes out, we might be on our YouTube channel. So keep an eye out on the YouTube channel at The Villain Pod, or we will let you know on Instagram at The Villain Pod when that is ready to go out. And if you're interested in retro wrestling games, you might be interested in giving that a watch.
I'm interested. This has nothing to do with me. This is all on Sam. So I'm very excited to see this and see how Sam's reviewing video game skills are. I'm particularly looking forward to it. So
all right. Might be fun.
You'll certainly get a view from me, Sam. That's for sure.
There we go. I'll take one view.
I'll do it on the Mighty Scale account, so you'll get the number for sure.
Excellent.
All right. So I guess we should see people off, right?
That sounds good to me. All right. Well, have a good week. Till next week.